The Everything Sequel podcast is brought to you by 2T Fitness and the Vegas Beer Guys.
Today's episode is brought to you by the Sounds in Cinema podcast. The Everything Sequel podcast contains explicit language. You have been forewarned. Hello and welcome to the Everything Sequel podcast. This is an Indiana Jones edition. Today, we're talking The Last Crusade. My name is Michael Shantz of the How Dare You Awards. Joining me, the man, the myth, the legend, donning his hat, Tom Stewart of Lonesome Whistle Productions. Say hi, Tom.
I should have mailed it to the Marx Brothers.
Will you take it easy?
Great line, great delivery. That's where the film kicks into gear for me. That moment. It's the first sort of great comedic line in the entire movie.
What I like is because they both equally fuck up throughout the movie.
They do,
and they don't always catch each other, but sometimes they do. I love it when Henry calls the Germans dolts. Do you think my son would be dumb enough to bring the book here? And Harrison Ford has to give him that great look of, like a great look to a dad of, well, now hang on a second. And then later on, when they escape, and he's saying, well, we got to go back to get the book. And he goes, can't you remember? Like he's a doddering old man. I love it.
Yeah. There's something, I suspect that it's true that every word that comes out of Sean Connery's mouth was written by Tom Stoppard, but this line particularly, I feel like that's a line that was agonized over. Like they could have gone for the Three Stooges, they could have gone for Laurel and Hardy,
right.
but the music of it works better with the Marx Brothers, and once they found out that would historically make sense for 1938, it must have literally been a hallelujah moment.
Yeah, right. Slapping high fives.
And with Connery's accent, of course, it just adds to the music of it.
Well, here we are, ladies and gentlemen. We're talking Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade, a 1989 film directed by Steven Spielberg. We mentioned him in the last episode. You probably know his work. This movie, 84% on Rotten Tomatoes. And, for this what was originally a trilogy, you still have to kind of marvel at what they get for out of their bucks, because this one, the money's upped, but a budget of $48 million.
It's pretty much exactly the same people working on the movie
as
well, and that's got to
it really, because it streamlines.
It must streamline the budget because you don't have to waste time and resources telling people their jobs.
Right. They know exactly what to do. They can kind of predict each other.
I mean, in the first time in my years now doing credit checks, I've never seen two sets of credits more identical than this and Temple of Doom.
Oh yeah, yeah. I didn't. I don't. I start powering down during the credits. And,
because I've got your back, right?
I know you have my back, and unless I see something bird related that I won't remember later, or whatever it was.
Was it? Well, it was. I said giant bugs, and you
bugs.
Said,
that's what it was.
That reminds me of something, and that's as far as we've got with that memory.
I can't even remember bugs between birds.
Yeah, you can recall the opening crawl to Highlander 2, the quickening word for word. Doesn't make any sense.
Nope. This movie had opening weekend of $29.3 million, in the USA $197.1, and in the world $474.1 million. You know what it reminds me of? I mean, we talk, obviously we'll get to the Dial of Destiny at the end of this series, and we've already in the ranking episode talked about how kind of bloated the running time of that movie is.
For sure.
And
Although
It's-
we have no room to talk about bloated running times.
No,
I
no,
re-
no, 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 no.
After we finished recording the last episode, it's like I really need to give Dial of Destiny an easier time for its length after what we just did.
I had that thought when we finished up recording for Temple of Doom as well, because I remember thinking to myself, fuck, we talked an hour more about that movie than that movie's running time.
Yeah.
But it just, as I'm looking at this, the money corner of this movie, and seeing that in the USA it only made $197.1 million, which would be, I think today would be looked at as like a terrible tragedy, right? It's just not enough money.
It seems
But
that way, yeah.
when you only spend $50 million on your movie, it's not a problem.
And also, there was there was stiff competition that year. I mean, think how many blockbusters came out in 1989.
Right.
You've got Bond films, you've got superhero movies.
I mean, this is the summer of Batman that was kind of taking over at that time, and this movie would have been released just probably a week or two before that movie.
I think in context, it's a success, but yeah, both because they managed their budget better than other movies did, but also because they chose to release it in a year where there hasn't really been any more blockbusters than there ever has throughout history released in the same year.
Right. All right. Well, as always, we'll start with some credits. We have the old school Paramount logo changing into a mountain, this time in the Utah desert.
Yeah. Back to it being an actual peak and
an actual
also
peak.
Reusing the classic title font from Raiders of the Lost Ark.
And yeah, I was going to say, going back to form.
What I can't figure out...
And it's funny because sorry to interrupt, but
no, it's okay.
When I go back and watch, say, Kingdom of the Crystal Skull, that feels like a necessary step in credit font of, remember how much you like us. This is, and it doesn't seem necessary here, but it still feels like a compulsion of the movie.
Well, I don't know what the compulsion is driven by, whether it's the adverse reaction to Temple of Doom, both from the people who made it and the people who saw it, or is it simply a byproduct of what we talk about all the time with trilogies, that they inevitably loop back to the original movie?
Yeah, right.
I think it's potentially both, but I'd be interested to see what the balance of those two tensions are with this. Because sometimes I feel like they were always going to go back to the well of Raiders. The literal well of souls, I suppose.
Yeah.
and another part of me thinks, no, they just wanted to, they wanted to get the bad taste of Temple of Doom out of their mouths.
Right. Which
No, I mean, we don't feel that way, but we know that
I take
the public
umbrage.
At large
Umbrage,
do.
I say.
And like you say, Spielberg and Lucas have, somewhat disowned that movie as well.
Yeah.
So it makes sense that they would want to get away from it as much as possible in these early moments of the movie.
When you watch these movies back to back, too, it's like these opening credits are everything that Temple of Doom is not. It's pretty to look at, but it's not very interesting.
Oh, I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
I really couldn't agree. Yeah, it's... it feels like it's that kind of what Quentin Tarantino in the screenplay True Romance calls the coffee table movie.
Right. Yeah.
It's the opening to a coffee table movie.
Yeah, totally.
The kind of, and it's it sort of starts with, it is Monument Valley that we're in, right? Or it's is it Utah?
It's Utah. I think it's Arches National Park.
Okay, so we're filming in Utah, and it's also in Utah.
Yeah, correct.
But the idea is to recreate the sense of Monument Valley visually from the John Ford.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And we're meant to think that we're in a western because it looks like the cavalry on horseback. The music as well is sort of less
certainly less interesting. It feels almost ethereal.
Yeah,
it's
conservative. It's closer to Raiders than anything they did in Temple of Doom, and I think that's deliberate as well, to kind of tone it down to something that they know works rather than something that was a big risk.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
but it feels like the credits of Temple of Doom have an idea behind it, and this just doesn't. You know, yeah.
Well, and it has a, it's a.
Other than to kind of revert back.
Other than to revert back and to, plug another classic kind of Hollywood genre look.
Right.
But I think the key is not in a not very interesting way.
Mm-hmm.
There's so much more going on in the intro of Temple of Doom.
Yeah, I agree.
Something in the titles that's interesting is that they, Sean Connery gets a "and" credit.
Mm-hmm.
And Sean Connery as Professor Henry Jones. And I assume by the time the movie was released, it was no secret that he was going to be in the movie and playing Indiana Jones' father.
No, yeah, we all knew that.
I wonder whether we're at a period in Hollywood history where you can't keep that secret anymore, because I feel like if you could have kept that secret until people actually saw the movie, you would. Because how incredible would that reveal? Sean Connery's face be?
Yeah, absolutely. But at the same time, I feel like you're starting to get into the area of big budget marketing.
Yeah,
with these
that's
big budget movies.
Mm-hmm.
And
I don't think you can do it.
I just don't think you have to. You have to use them to sell it.
Yeah.
Right.
I agreed. Yeah, it's we're post Entertainment Tonight. There's no way you can keep that secret anymore.
Yeah.
But I think in an ideal world, that would be a reveal that happens in the movie, not in the titles.
Right. Well, and then we find our titular character as a young man in the form of River Phoenix.
Spielberg's not abandoning children as a sequel character device, is he?
Not at all.
He's doubling down on that.
Very much so.
But this was I believe another Lucas concession. This is not how Spielberg wanted the movie to start.
Oh, that's interesting.
Yeah.
Because I was just about to ask you...
given what happens with prequels in Lucasfilm after this, I don't think that's any surprise.
Well, what do you think? Just speaking generally, what do you think of this opening scene? Because I have never been as big a fan as most people seem to be.
I agree. I think it ultimately falls flat. But if you're asking specifically about River Phoenix's performance, I think it's excellent. I want him in the movie, but I want it to be executed better.
That's what I want. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't take issue with the casting.
No.
And if you watch
picked by Harrison Ford.
Yeah, I was gonna say, if you watch the behind the scenes stuff, it was Harrison Ford that said the one person that looks the most like me at that age is this kid named River Phoenix.
And he also, in Mosquito Coast, he was doing impersonations of Harrison Ford.
Exactly right, yeah.
So it makes total... But it's not just an impersonation. He's definitely bringing his own film star gravitas, even at that young age, to the role. So it's a great choice, both because of his resemblance to Harrison Ford, but also his resemblance to the film stardom of Harrison Ford. He's someone who can carry that same gravitas with him in a movie.
Yeah, that I agree with. But the compulsion to try and explain everything that we know about Indy up until now.
Well, I feel like that's all Lucas.
And beyond that, in a rather, to me, it's a little dull.
Yeah. So, I mean, when the children, when the child scouts all line up and Herman falls off his horse,
right? It's
giving me like a Bad News Bears vibe.
Very much so.
Like in Temple of Doom, you're like, okay, so we've got a kid in the movie. This feels like a kids movie.
Mm-hmm.
And that seems to be that's how the use of children has changed.
But it also reminds me of Bad News Bears because we're using the fat kid as the as the center of attention for jokes.
Definitely. And I find it a bit I think similar to what you're saying, I find it a little bit tiresome that it tries so hard to deceive you into thinking something else is going on. Like,
Mhm.
it wants you to think that we're going to find Indy in his adulthood and that these two kids have discovered him on an archaeological dig by not showing
by
anyone's
show
face for a while.
by showing us the fedora.
And,
Richard
you
Young,
know,
by the way,
yeah.
again, is back in our
And,
lives.
well, yeah, and as you know,
Fresh off the
as,
set from uh,
I don't think that
Jason
the
series.
New Beginning. Yeah, and
Yeah.
I don't think they thought through the ramifications of, what a damp squib it is for the character that you think is Indy to turn around and it's revealed to be, Indy stand-in essentially, who turns around. It's sort of like, what are we supposed to get from that except disappointment?
Well, and I also, I'm not sure I understand, because this is sort of a seminal moment in the young kid's life. He's going to be searching for this object, the cross, for most of his life,
Sure.
into his 40s, and this is he loses. He's, he feels like he got cheated out of this. He won the day. He got home with the cross. It was taken away from him.
Yeah.
I think they try to cover it with that line about, you lost today, kid, but you don't have to like it. It just seems weird that he would mold himself after this guy that fucked him over.
The guy that fucked him over, and what a memory on this kid that he can recall every inch of that man's dress sense.
Yeah, right.
And imitate it in later life. Yeah, it's. I mean, and then once we see River Phoenix's face, we reveal that the movie is a prequel, or at least it starts as a prequel.
Yeah, right.
After the last movie was also a prequel, and that sort of, and that's why you have the delayed timestamp.
Yeah.
To show you that it's somewhere, that it's in Indiana Jones's youth, 1912, I think.
I think it was, yeah.
And it's sort of. For the sake of viewer trickery, it comes too late into the scene, and now we're thinking, oh, this is supposed to be where Indiana Jones got his idea for his costume.
Yeah, right.
Which,
in addition to many other things, the scar on his chin, we're surprised to find out he's not afraid of snakes, to find out why he is afraid of snakes.
Yeah.
And on and on and on and on. It just sort of never stops. And I guess, it's like all the comedy in the previous movie was pitched in a way where it's almost always making me laugh. It's always good. And this movie will have that too, but not for 50 minutes until Henry Sr. shows up. And in this front scene, it's all winking towards the audience. It's all, hey, look at us. Don't you love this? Don't you love this? It's so waving its arms at the audience saying, like me, like me, like me.
And they're skipping ahead a little bit.
And I don't.
When we get to the magic disappearing act, I'm like, in this one scene, it's far more on the nose and silly than anything in Temple of Doom was.
Yeah, exactly.
And Temple of Doom is the movie that has the reputation for that.
Yeah.
But there's nothing quite as obscene as that in any of Temple.
I agree with you completely. How does he know how to use that box?
Also, everything is kind of elevated in a way that feels really phony. Like one of the other. So you've got Lifetime Indiana Jones.
Mm-hmm.
You've got a guy who looks like Alice Cooper, and and then there's this kid who's
always yipping and yawn.
Oh my god, he's doing this gold prospector whooping. I mean, we're laying on the Western cliches so thick and cartoonishly here.
Yeah.
Like, I believe his actual lines are, "We got some woo! Woo!" But in the middle of that, River's doing a great job of managing the Ford impression with his own strengths and quirks.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I love that when the hair falls in the middle of his face. I mean, that's a River Phoenix moment. That's not a Harrison Ford moment.
Right.
That's something you only get with this actor, which is why it's a better alternative to de-aging always.
I
That
like
actor's gonna bring something new every
yes.
time.
I like that it's river centric. I'm not. I also always wonder what are hairstyles like in 1912. I'm not sure this jives for me.
No, that's yeah. It's It's,
so it's working for the actor but against the movie.
Definitely, that is
Yeah.
definitely true. And this is a niche form of acting, isn't it? Movies like The Godfather Part 2 and Solo, again with Harrison Ford.
Mm-hmm.
There's only a handful of actors who've done this kind of style of acting where you're simultaneously
Yeah.
you're not only replacing a film character, but you're replacing an actor playing a film character
Right.
at the same time. So it's not even like being the new Bond or the new Spider-Man.
Right. Right.
It's another level to that, which is that you've got to take on the actor.
You have to
who
take
played them
on
before.
some of the person.
Yeah.
Because you're still the same person.
Yeah, and the fact that he comes out with it and we don't think anything of it, I think says it all about how good that performance is.
I'll agree.
And Indy's in his pre-snake phobia stage, not for long, but for the next minute. And back when he only stole artifacts from other grave robbers.
Yeah, exactly.
He's kind of at this
he's
point.
So
he's
sanctimonious in this movie.
This is like his Robin Hood period, isn't it?
Yeah, right.
Although they, they come out of the gates retconning, his dislike of museums from.
Yeah, now he loves them.
Yeah, which doesn't make any sense. That
you know what I guess I don't like about it the most is that it's not just that he seems to like them; it's that the movie seems to say how important museums are.
Yeah, they definitely. I mean, again,
and just watch a 60 Minutes report on how fucked up what museums do to other countries. It's not necessarily a good thing.
Well, that was it. Back in October when I was watching, doing my horror movie a day.
Mm-hmm.
I watched the original Boris Karloff Mummy.
Yeah.
And I was like, it's great if you can buy the British Museum as the heroes.
Yeah.
that dynamic doesn't work anymore.
No, not at all.
Yeah, so if you contrast that to the opening of Temple of Doom, they're building on the moral ambiguity of the character. This movie is about kind of whitewashing ambiguity as much as possible. So it comes out of the gates in defense of learning and preservation.
Mm-hmm.
By a question nobody asked him, but we find out how he feels about it. And it's the safe option.
Well,
it's not punching a cigarette girl in the face.
No, right.
To start your movie.
But on top of all of this, and it's not the first time we're going to talk about this, but this whole front scene and so much of this movie is all a tip of the hat saying goodbye to the audience.
Mm.
It's all signaling that this is the end of the series, which it's not. So retroactively,
and it's a dangerous thing for a sequel to do, as we
exactly
before.
Right. Yeah.
You got to keep your options open.
Mm-hmm.
There's a great line in here, which I'm convinced Tom Stoppard wrote, which is, everybody's lost but me.
Yeah.
That feels like the guy who wrote every entrance is an exit to somewhere else. and there's a callback to it later, which I suspect was also written by Tom Stoppard.
Probably.
But yeah, I mean, we're minutes into the movie and 2 horses have fallen over already. Or 2 people have fallen from horses already.
Yeah.
Which lets you know that there's going to be a lot of comedic undercutting in this movie. Not comedy, but comedic undercutting of moments.
That's a good way to put it, yeah.
Of of potentially heroic moments. And it's what this scene reminds me of with the car chasing the horse across the desert plains.
Mm-hmm.
Back to the Future Part 3.
Yeah.
You put the scene where they arrive in the Old West in the DeLorean and this side by side. I bet it's exactly the same shots. And that's 2 movies in the same year.
In the same year, right.
Which chose to be kind of Western-based prequel versions of the franchise.
They just switch. In one, the hero's on the horse, and the other, the hero's in the car.
1989 was a busy year.
Busy.
There weren't enough ideas to go around. And yeah, you get the sense that, you know, they picked the circus carriage of the train. Not that many trains have circus carriages, I don't think.
Right. Maybe they did in 1912.
Because they know it's the gateway to a series of sight gags.
Yeah.
That they can do.
Rhinos and giraffes and lions, snakes and eels.
And I guess the other rationale is, how would Indy have all of his formative experiences in one place?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, a circus carriage of a train is literally the only place he can do all of that back to back.
Yeah.
Where there would be access to a whip, a lion, a snake.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, it's interesting because this feels like the next decade of Lucasfilm in a nutshell.
I think
Because
you're
you've
right
got
about that, yeah.
Young Indiana Jones series, which comes a few years after this, and then you've got the Star Wars prequels. So
Sure.
everything they're doing in these scenes is kind of a runway to that.
Mm-hmm.
Because it's young, you know, it feels like a backdoor pilot for a Young Indiana Jones TV series, which I'm sure George Lucas has already conceived of at this point.
Mm-hmm.
But
I mean, it was probably he probably pushed this whole front scene on Steven Spielberg just to test how well a Young Indiana Jones thing could look, sound, and feel. You know?
Yeah, and I mean, it's still, you know, and as we've said before when we discussed the Star Wars prequels, what the Star Wars prequels were was what the industry eventually became.
Mm-hmm.
And it's true here in the same sense, because, you know, prequels became huge for a long period of time. We're sort of easing off them now, and more into reboots and multiverse spin-offs, but,
right?
Yeah, but for a long time, you know, your first choice was your first port of call was a prequel.
Mm-hmm.
And I think this is formative in that shift.
Sure.
This is where Indy got the idea to be afraid of unconvincing snakes. And I mean, it's been said to death, but it's worth mentioning again. All his formative life events happen in the space of a few minutes of screen time.
Yeah.
The scar, the whip,
all the most important things in his life,
the snake phobia,
were on this one train.
Yeah, and
including the hat. I mean, he gets the hat from the guy, you know?
He gets the hat, he gets his dress sense.
Yeah. Gets his whip, gets his scar, gets his fear of snakes. I mean, that's a lot.
It is. Oh, I mean, it's ridiculous.
It's obscene.
It is obscene. It's interesting that they learned the wrong lessons from Temple of Doom. Like, just having the animal fun is not enough.
Right.
Like, for all my critiques of those scenes in which this, you know, animal fun is too much of a distraction from the core of a really good dramatic scene.
Yeah.
At least Temple knows you need a core dramatic scene in there, not just animal fun, not just animal hijinks, which is all this is.
Sure. And it's funny too, because we're introducing Panama Hat as though he's Belloc. Or like a Belloc type character.
Or Ravenwood.
Yeah. Just to have him be killed 3 minutes later. Because once he gets once Fedora puts the fedora on Indiana Jones and we're on this boat.
Yeah.
I always...
Oh, you mean Panama Hat. Sorry, I thought you meant fedora. No, I got it.
No, yeah, Panama Hat.
I don't know why the character's named after hats, but...
Yeah, exactly right. Fedora and Panama Hat.
Yeah. Well, I mean, they did that with Lao Che as well. They burned him in the first 10 minutes, but...
Sure. But and you brought up the idea of it belongs in a museum, so do you.
Mm.
And we're so early on in this series, that's dangerous talk.
But you're right, it's another tip of the hat, literally a tip of the Panama hat to saying goodbye, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
One thing I retrospectively appreciate about this scene is that it does establish once. Actually, it's only when Indy is in contact with his father that this movie works.
Mm-hmm.
When he goes back to the house and he tries to tell, he does the scene from It's a Wonderful Life where he asks Dad
Yeah.
trying to, when
No,
the kid
Dad,
gets
you
poisoned
listen
by
to me.
You know how that feel-good Christmas movie begins with a pharmacist nearly poisoning his own son to death. Classic Hollywood feel-good movie.
Good stuff.
Great stuff. And so they establish a lot of plot points in this scene. Obviously, the Grail Diary. So this is the first time that we have the MacGuffin in the opening.
That's true.
scene.
Yeah.
We've got one MacGuffin for the entire movie this time, not.
Well, it's like a
Dual MacGuffins.
MacGuffin and a half, like, because the real MacGuffin is the Grail itself, but then you have the half.
That famous
diary.
Burt Reynolds, Alfred Hitchcock vehicle, MacGuffin and a half. But also the dog, which doesn't pay off until the end of the movie.
Right, yeah.
And also, there's something that's done quite subtly is that obviously, establishing the idea that Sean Connery is a distant father and that there's tension in their relationship.
Mm-hmm.
But he makes him count in Greek.
Yeah.
And yet, in the final scene of the movie, he needs to know Latin.
Yeah, right.
So it's like it's introducing the idea that he knows classic languages, but it's not so on the nose that.
But it's not so. Yeah, right.
Yeah, it's Greek rather than Latin, and again, a stupider modern day movie would absolutely have him counting in Latin.
Yeah.
Even probably saying Jehovah.
Right.
To show you, but they've got the nous here to sort of just make it just like, okay, so he knows.
So he knows things. Yeah, exactly. And
well,
we talked about it, I think, a little bit in the last episode, in the sense of here it makes complete sense. Where he says, what does he say? Is it count to 10 or 100?
Count to 10.
10
in Greek.
In Greek. And but what you have the sense of is the education that he's getting beyond his schooling, just at home with his father.
Yeah.
And that's enough. That's all you need for the end of that movie. But it gets unwieldy later on in the series about how much, how much knowledge Indiana Jones actually has. It seems to me by the end of this series, he just speaks every language in the world.
Yeah.
Including dead ones. All the dead ones, too.
Yeah, at this point, we still feel the need to set up something specific he might know going into the finale of the movie. But now, once they kind of create the idea that he's had a rounded education, they exploit that for all it's worth.
Yeah.
And then the bugle spit take. It's like going really hard on every joke within sight.
Oh, yeah.
And it's like if you're watching this for the first time, you're already getting the feeling that this could be very tedious to sustain for an entire movie.
Right. Well, and speaking of tedious, I mean, for me, I'm thinking about the what I'll still call cold opens of, even though they're not, of Raiders and Temple of Doom.
They're in that tradition. Yeah,
they're in that tradition
of the cold open. Yeah.
And when I think about beginning, middle, and end, those have them. This one has a beginning and a middle and an end, but at the end, I'm only left with questions because jumping off of a ship into the ocean seems like A, a terrible plan to escape. B, once the ship explodes, great. I guess they're not going to be after you anymore. And I get the joke that there's a life raft there or but that doesn't mean you're safe. Like there's no, he flies off on the plane away from danger and darts and raiders. He gets on a plane. He doesn't realize that he's stepped into another trap on that plane. But
that's interesting because that's an inversion, isn't it? The plane in Raiders means safety, and the plane in Temple means doom,
death. Yeah, or the possibility of.
It's Temple of Doom Airlines.
Yeah, exactly. But
You're right.
this one poses questions that don't get answered. How is that guy safe? And so to me, it's all a little. It finishes muddled.
Yes, it does.
That doesn't help this movie.
It doesn't. I'll tell you what else doesn't help this movie. Again, like Indy learns his mistrust of authority in the scene where the crooked sheriff gives the artifacts back to Panama Hat and Fedora, and it's like Well, that means he has to relearn that Why is he relearning that lesson in Raiders?
Right.
Why would he ever trust authority again? So it doesn't even make sense within the prequel format that they've established, and no one
Sure.
asked them. No one asked for a prequel, like a childhood prequel. And
Yeah, when the government comes calling, he should say, "No, thank you.
yeah, I've been here before.
Been here
several
before.
times.
No, no, I know how this ends."
And
But that's what I mean.
also,
It just feels like this movie's not thinking on that level.
no,
It's not remembering that this is in the past. It's not remembering that this character will take clearly this character doesn't take this information, through the rest of his life because he makes the same mistakes.
and it's particularly evident in this movie because when they flash forward, this is the first time we've seen anything post Raiders of Indiana Jones.
Yeah, right.
So this is the first sequel
Mm-hmm.
proper, and then I think they generally make the right moves. They don't address anything, any hanging storylines from previous movies.
Mm-hmm.
They just kind of steer clear of all of that, which I'm fine with. But the boat scene it just feels like a maritime version of the Lao Che scene.
Yeah, right. Right.
It's the same thing in it's old wine in new bottles.
Mm-hmm.
We're just at sea instead of at a nightclub. So
Yeah, but it also
it's less visually interesting as well because it's so dark and rainy and...
it's dark, it's rainy. We're circling back, as we've talked about many times. We're circling back to the original because he's not going to go on from that boat to whatever adventure he's doing. He's going to go home. He's in class. He's teaching. We're going to get Brody. That's following the blueprint of Raiders.
And Spielberg was explicit about that. Like, he never made any bones about it.
Mm-hmm.
Or any Jones about it. He said, he wanted people to relive Raiders through this movie. So, again, can't go to Hamlet and say where are the elephants, but you can dispute the choice that was made in the first place, but the execution of the choice is kind of in alignment with what he set out to do.
Sure.
But inevitably, when you do that, it's going to be diminishing returns.
Yeah, right.
And that's maybe where Spielberg's sequel brain doesn't really work like the rest of his cinematic brain.
Right.
Sometimes.
Yeah, right. Well,
and the shipwreck is like another example of set piece fatigue, right? We've already had about 3 or 4 different set pieces, so we're already kind of tired of the relentless pace. I mean, it's now par for the course in a blockbuster. I think Temple of Doom had a lot to do with it.
Yeah, I mean, because we talked about, but we also talked about how it works for that movie, because we're introducing new stuff to the audience so quickly, but the movie doesn't have time to explain it to you. And that works for what's happening in the scenes.
Yeah. It's a slippery slope because
right.
If that's successful, then commercial.
You feel like it can always work.
That you've got to pack a film with set pieces as much as possible, and no one has stemmed that tide yet in blockbuster movies, and now it's out of control.
And this'll,
we've got like 3 to 4 hour movies, blockbuster movies out there in the world now.
With this boat scene, it's the first time in an Indiana Jones movie where I'm seeing a set piece that looks really big, but I don't necessarily buy where they are and what they're doing. It feels like a set.
Sure. Yeah.
And I guess it was disconcerting to me the first time I saw this movie and saw the boat scene. Not that it's not that it looks bad, because you have the water crashing over the, the boat and everything. But it looks like it's been fabricated.
Fabricated, exactly. It doesn't feel organic like the bridge scene or even the nightclub scene, which is... Organic is not a word that is normally used to describe that, but it feels organic to the world that
they've created,
in that scene, and this just feels like a stopgap.
Yeah.
Between, a way to take us into the present without really kind of focusing on that and trying to make it good.
Mm-hmm.
And the hat imagery is kind of taken over now, and this is the first
for sure.
Indiana Jones movie where the hat is part of the tagline, so there's a publicity advantage to emphasizing the hat. And in the end of the scene the story is told through hats,
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
which I feel like is you got to be Miller's Crossing to do that.
To do that,
skillfully,
and
This just feels like something they could rip from the movie for pre-publicity.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, we got through our first scene. Why don't we take a break and we'll come back and re-meet Brody and find out who Walter Donovan is.
Let's Rodney Dangerfield it up and go back to school.
Exactly right. All right, everyone. We'll be back.
I'm all right. Wrong movie.
You're right. You gotta arm fart and check the wind.
Oh, wow! I did not know you knew that movie so intimately. That is
of course.
Great. Yeah. The last time it was continually on TV when I was a kid, but it's a movie that it feels like it's been wiped by my memory, like the using the Men in Black lady shade tool.
That's great. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we'll be back. We'll talk more Crusade right after this. Does the coronavirus have you feeling oogie? Have you been sitting on your couch for weeks? Nay, have you been sitting on there for months? Well, it's time for you to get back in shape. Check out 2AT Fitness. You can find them on Instagram. You can find them on Facebook. 2AT Fitness was started by Tina Bernard. She is ready and raring to go to help you get back into the shape you want to get into. They've got all kinds of classes. They've got outdoor in-person classes. They've got online classes if that's what you prefer. Ladies and gentlemen, it's time to get back in shape. You're going to find a variety of exercises. You're going to have strength training, cardio, weightlifting, even fun 5-minute burnouts that will push you to your limits. So get off the couch, get into shape. Go ahead and check out 2AT Fitness. Tina Bernard has got you for all your needs. I know her personally. She's fantastic. You're not going to meet a better person to help you become the new you. Check it out. And we're back, ladies and gentlemen. Tom and I are here discussing Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade. I say the last of the good movies in the Indiana Jones series.
Yeah.
I guess you do too.
I agree. That's ancient history, or dare I say archaeology.
There you go. And we're getting a little lesson about archaeology, and he is saying everything that grains against what we've seen him do. And we'll see him do.
And we'll see him do, yeah. But it's also, I keep bringing this up every time there's a classroom scene in any movie, but even when the movie is about the teacher of the class, he's still talking about whatever the theme of the movie is.
Yeah.
Like, there's no way to have a classroom subject that is not in some way linked to the theme of the movie.
What we're going to watch. Yeah.
Yeah, and we're back at Marshall College. The film structure has modeled itself on Raiders. We even get the same camera movement that introduces the college, I think.
Right, yeah.
Or a very similar one. And again, I don't know...
Even kind of Brody entering the room feels...
Yeah.
Exactly the same.
Recreation, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's clearly conscious, but again, I don't know whether it's driven by just the type of sequel it is, or fan service, essentially. What we would now call fan service about Raiders.
It feels more like that to me, but
yeah,
like you said, who knows? Who knows what was in their minds? All we know is that we're learning that archaeology is the search for facts, and that X does not mark the spot.
Right, and we're also learning that the filmmaker's sexual politics have changed somewhat as the character has aged.
Right.
Because there's less swooning from the students.
Right. Yeah.
Far fewer sexual
Advances.
So there's been, there's clearly been some kind of cultural change even since the early 1980s that prevents them from.
Yeah, there's not even one boy willing to give him an apple.
Although, Harrison Ford kind of does his best kind of flirt look.
Yeah.
And there's a little bit of it when he gets into his office hours, but
right.
I always feel like that's more just like autograph hunters, kind of like.
It feels like that
Harrison Ford fandom rather than
right.
Indiana. We want to have sex with our teacher, as it clearly was in the original.
Yeah, I think it's also funny because we talked a lot in Temple of Doom about where the character sits within his own morality.
Yeah.
And I do think it's funny that with all the students following him and he tells, start making a list and I will see you in order. Then he just skips out like a real dick.
Yep. Absolutely. And also his office is like his own little version of the Raiders warehouse.
Yeah, it is, yeah.
Which blissfully we don't know is Area 51 yet.
Right.
But also we can track the progression of these movies in terms of how interested indie students are in him.
Yeah, right, sure.
Because we run the gamut of that by Tile of Destiny.
Definitely.
And at this point, they're still taking an interest in him, but only a handful of them sexually.
Mm-hmm.
Most of them want him for his brain at this point.
Yeah.
His body. Still pretty damn good body, I gotta say.
I mean, it's only
still
5 years
body
later.
By Jake.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I as I said, this is my favorite period of Harrison Ford.
Mm-hmm.
Is this era? Is right
starting
right in the
yeah.
This is right in the solar plexus of that.
I agree.
Marcus is still the Marcus we knew at this point, which always freaks me out.
So
thinking about what he will become by the end of the movie.
Yeah, exactly. And this was
it feels like if they're gonna do this U-turn of character, it should have started here.
That's what it's funny because I hadn't watched this movie in a while. And as I was watching it, I specifically wanted to look out for the new Marcus in this scene. And as I'm watching it, I start writing notes that say, well, this is the old Marcus that I knew before.
Yeah.
So he's even the old Marcus at one point in this film, and then they retcon him. And it's a good joke. I'll give them the joke about 2-day head start and blah 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 blah.
Yeah, we'll get there. That's a funny cut.
It's a funny cut.
I don't know if it's worth burning an entire character.
An entire character, exactly. And it always stuck in my craw how much they seem to retcon poor Marcus Brody. I didn't like it.
But it was from both ends, right? There's Spielberg. When Denham Elliott was interviewed about this, he said, I'm really glad, I was Indy's father figure in Raiders.
Mm-hmm.
In this movie, they gave him a father. So Spielberg said to me, we've got to change your character, do something else with you, because Indy has his own Marcus, and it's his dad.
Yeah.
So we need to do... And he said, I was really relieved when they said they wanted to lean into the buffoonery.
Okay.
And as has been pointed out several times, not least on Indiana Jones Minute, Marcus's arc in this movie is exactly the same as his arc in Trading Places. So this is something clearly Denham Elliott likes to do.
Sure, yeah.
Acting wise. And
eggnog.
That makes me want to give it a break, but at the same time, we're all, I think, culturally so attached to the Raiders Marcus that it's hard to take.
Absolutely.
Because he gives the scenes in that movie such gravitas.
Gravitas, yeah, exactly.
Such legitimacy. He's got the best monologue, I think, in the entire series.
Yeah, right.
And I think that's what causes the problem. The decision, it makes sense dramatically if you've got a Marcus figure in the movie.
Yeah.
You don't want to dilute you don't want to dilute him.
That relationship, right?
Yeah. So and we'll talk more as we go on, because at this point he's not showing any of the red flags at all.
No, right.
And it's interesting because when I look at it now, I'm like, and this is not what they're going for at all. It's just a byproduct, but it's actually quite a plausible representation of dementia. Because
Yes,
he has
totally.
good days and
Bad days, right? Totally.
Sometimes he's really lucid, and then other days he's just off his rocker. So I know that's not what they're going for, but when you watch it over the entire movie and he's a different character in each scene, you're going, this is tracking the path of dementia quite psychologically accurately.
At one moment, he can be telling you why you shouldn't be going after the thing it is because of the religious implications and blah 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 blah. And other moments, he can be the Trading Places Denholm Elliott, where he says, "Oh, it beats them to it, eggnog."
I also kind of invented a subplot where, off script, once they arrived in Venice and they realized he was losing his marbles, Indy invented a mission for him to go on.
Yeah.
There isn't a real mission.
Yeah, it's just fake.
He was just like, it was a really big mistake to bring him to Venice. We've got to get him out of there somehow. And he invited himself as well. He wasn't really invited.
I guess you could make the that's true. You could make the argument that maybe it was that bonk in the head in the library. Maybe that just sent him for a loop.
It's like post Carbonite. He was never the same.
Yeah. Well, meanwhile, Donovan's
and it's like after Han Solo after Carbonite, he's also crossing his eyes as well when he acts.
Well, meanwhile, Donovan's men are gonna kidnap Indiana Jones. He should have figured it out then.
Probably. But I agree with what you're saying about him ditching work, and Raiders very much feels like Indy was trying to do his job, but went off on a patriotic field trip.
Yeah.
This is just dereliction of duty.
Totally. He's just not doing his job.
He's not leaving that office to go off and do something important.
No.
Culturally. He just gets ambushed. And this is the scene where he... Well, this is the other thing is that, it's another case of Indy is so like the villain. How would he know he was a villain?
Yeah, right.
Because he's like, we both share a passion for antiquities, and you're like, oh yeah, another villain who's got the moral drop on Indy again. And this is where Bond gets his quest.
Wow.
Sorry, Indy gets his quest. Literally didn't mean to say that.
Wow.
This is where...
I could tell you didn't mean to do that. It was just natural.
I'm exposed as a James Bond fan for the first time ever. And it's the Holy Grail.
Mm-hmm.
Which Spielberg expresses through his classic 80s understatement of seeing Donovan pour a glass of champagne.
There you go.
So... Oh no, but this movie does have two MacGuffins. I'm wrong. This movie, because the cross is he gets his MacGuffin in the opening scene.
Yeah, that's true.
The cross.
Yeah,
he does. But we know of the Grail Diary before or simultaneously. It's like a changing of the guard, changing of the MacGuffin. But it's also interesting that after he's pursued...
Well, right now he's going to learn that the MacGuffin is the Holy Grail, the cup of Christ. Yeah, later it will become the diary.
But that's his father's MacGuffin.
Yeah.
So, I mean, he's achieved his lifelong dream of getting the Cross of Coronado back. Yeah, now he's pursuing his father's dream, which is just like Boomers and Gen X, kind of in a nutshell, right? It's like Boomers don't want us to have our own dream. They just want us to have They just want us to
continue their dream,
their parents' dream. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
What do you think of Julian Glover's Donovan?
So here's the thing. He's a wonderful actor. Yeah, he's great in this role.
Yeah.
I don't relish him as a villain like I do the other villains in this series. I don't think he doesn't compare to a Bullock. I still really like Mola Ram. I do.
Well, those
Belloc,
are the two.
Sorry, Belloc.
No, I was going to just let you die on that hill.
I'm going to cut it all out.
No, they call him Balosh.
Yeah.
So I think you've said something really interesting there, which is that those are the two opposite poles of Indiana Jones villainy, and Donovan is sort of right in between.
Right in between, sure.
he's almost, I think, and partly this is down to Julian Glover as well. He's almost so believable that he's not actually that menacing.
Yeah,
You
right.
know, he plays this idea of the American industrialist caught up in Nazi shenanigans so authentically that you don't feel like you don't feel any villainy. You just feel like that's the character he's playing.
Yeah, totally.
And I like how all shucks he is in this scene.
Mm-hmm.
Because that does sort of show, you know, he's manipulative and disingenuous.
Well, and
I like the idea of the character as well. I love the idea.
Yeah.
I think it's a really subversive move from Spielberg to have your villain be an American industrialist at the end of the 1980s.
Totally. Yeah.
And I think that's been overlooked.
Mm-hmm.
Because that is kind of implicating America in the rise of Nazism, which
right.
historically is the case.
Yeah.
You know, America, up until they joined the war, America didn't know which side it was going to join.
Right.
Was it going to fight communism or Nazism? And Donovan is representative of that ambivalence.
Mm-hmm.
So,
and you know, it's interesting too, just from speaking from the guise of the character. You know, he does something that's really interesting to me because he says "our leader" several times, and it's not till the very end that he tells Indiana Jones, "By the way, the leader's your father, and he's missing."
it's like the show Pop Idol, right?
You're burying the lead, sir.
It's crazy. I mean, there's no rationale for doing that.
Yeah, right.
For waiting that long to tell him that his dad is missing.
That's how you know he's up to some shit. If
That's
you're
for
paying
the audience.
attention.
Well, yeah, but it's also for the audience's benefit.
Oh,
I think
totally.
Overall, the exposition in this scene is not as well disguised as it is in Raiders.
Mm-hmm.
In the top men scene.
Yeah.
Which I know is a high bar because you learn so much in that scene, and when the scene's over, you don't feel like you've been lectured at.
Talked to.
Talked down to.
Right.
You just feel like I learned a lot, but then you break it down into the elements. You're like, oh my god, that is a lot of exposition in one scene. And this just feels like a lot of exposition in one scene.
Totally.
And by the end of it, you're kind of you're sort of overwhelmed with information.
Mm-hmm.
Clearly, they left that reveal to the end of the scene because they knew no one would pay attention to anything after that.
Yeah, exactly.
But there's no character reason for Donovan to be doing it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you can imagine him deceiving Indy about his father being involved, but not in a scene where he's telling him that his father's involved.
Yes. And then because once Indiana Jones finds that out, I kind of forgot about this scene in which he goes to Henry's home with Brody to go, kind of try and check on him. I'd forgotten about that
Brody
scene.
is also, not only is he Indy's lifelong friend, he's also Henry's lifelong friend.
Yes, as we learned.
In fact, the only reason that Indy knows Marcus is through Henry.
Yeah. As we came to find out in this movie.
As we came to find out, and that's I liked slipping the father into the backstory. I think that's fine, and obviously it's going to pay off when we finally see him. But I don't like the retrofit of Marcus as sort of like a surrogate.
Yeah,
Henry.
Yeah,
that's what we're. But he's also original recipe Henry.
So that's the problem.
Because there was no Indy's dad.
Yeah,
when
exactly.
Raiders was made, so
the real problem is
surrogate.
that you could make the argument that you can bring Dad into this. I think it's better if he didn't know Dad, if Brody didn't know Dad.
Agreed.
100%
agreed. I also think if I didn't know what they would do with it in the actual film, if I was asked my honest opinion about whether Indiana Jones's father should be in the movie, I would say absolutely not. Stay away from this. It's never going to work.
Yeah.
So what do I know?
Yeah, sure.
But I feel like the idea that he and Marcus are lifelong friends is a bridge too far.
Yeah.
And in the scene, that I feel like they're trying to force the magic of the Raiders home scene.
Yeah, that's how I felt too.
When you start to force that comparison really hard, you're never gonna win. You're never gonna beat a movie.
You can't
like
beat
Raiders.
it because you were just talking about the speech that he gave.
Yeah, and there's a kind of sense they want to recreate that, but there's nothing more to add in what they're doing. They're just in a different house.
Yeah, they're in a different house, and even in the scene itself, it's just sort of Brody saying, "Wow, cup of Christ, wow." It's like they can't really get past that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, they're like, this scene writes itself. Well, actually, it doesn't.
No.
You need to write it.
Yeah.
I love that Indy's father first appears in photographic form. That is the total impasse.
So solid.
I mean, and he's in the movie.
That's
so
our sequel, bread and butter, right there.
It's a double impasse, and he will also appear in photographic form in the next.
The next movie, right?
And the end of the scene is an inversion of Raiders because Marcus offers to go on the journey when not invited, instead of rejecting the offer to go with Indy as he did in Raiders.
Yeah. So that goes against character as well.
It does, unless Marcus was secretly hoping in Raiders that Indy would force him to go. Yeah, and that he was just plain possible.
Who, me? I couldn't possibly.
And then
unless you really want me to.
Yeah, I'm not going to take that chance again. I'm going with you.
Yeah.
Make that 2.
Well, and for this series, we'll get another impasse with the plane ride on the map with the laser.
Sure.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Laser line map. So far, only the only narrative stylistic commonality, apart from I guess the Raiders theme in all 3 movies.
Mm-hmm.
Between all 3 movies, I mean, obviously this and Raiders are very compatible.
Sure.
But you've got Temple in the middle, and this is the only thing that kind of bridges the gap between
through line for all of them.
Literally the through line.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I forgot to mention that Indy, when he gets into his office, he's got the mail from his dad, which he says out loud, "Venice, Italy."
Yeah. Right.
And we put it together, and then in the following scene, we put it together before he does. So
before he does, yeah, that's true. He's behind
the
us.
audience.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he turns out to be behind the 8 ball because he doesn't understand what Donovan is doing. So classic Indiana Jones.
Indy at his best when he's at his. Indy's at his best for us when he's at his worst.
Sometimes, yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like they want people in the audience to scream out, "It's in your pocket!" This is where Donovan is getting extremely manipulative, saying, "Don't trust anyone."
Mm-hmm.
And once again, villains are hiding in plain sight, and Indy,
clueless.
He is remarkably easy to deceive.
Just put them in the form of one of the most beautiful women on the planet.
It would have been nice if he got on the plane and got, "That was a strange thing to say." if you're not a villain,
right?
What do you think?
He says, "Don't trust anyone." They get on a plane, and then there's the doctor saying, "Hello, it's very good to meet you."
What do you think of Our Venice? Our Venice.
I don't think I liked it even the first time I saw it.
So here's what I like about it and what I don't like. I like that whenever Harrison Ford says it, he looks like he's really enjoying himself, and he's
right.
There's a private joke in his head that we don't have access to.
Right. Okay.
Because
fine.
he lights up every time he says it. But I don't understand the root of if it is a joke, if it's a reference. What's the reference?
That's the thing for me is
was this like an ad campaign or something?
Is this a well-known phrase?
I don't think it is.
Yeah,
and
no.
yet Harrison Ford every time says it as if everyone is going to know
right.
in the audience and on screen what he's talking about. And that kind of makes me both love and hate it, because I like the idiosyncrasy of Harrison Ford enjoying saying it, but
mm-hmm.
I don't understand why he keeps saying it.
I guess the part where it goes too far for me is when they, just survive rats and almost getting burned to death. It's not the first thing on my mind when I crawl out of the sewer.
Yeah.
Venice. Because
Also,
at that point it's one of those jokes in this movie that's too wink wink.
But it's like the joke also has no root.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, right.
So it's not a good punchline, and the setup is meaningless.
Non-existent.
Yeah. So I'm glad you feel that way, because I feel the same.
Yeah.
It's interesting, the choice of Venice, for a couple of reasons, of course. You know, James Bond movies have a history there. Moonraker and From Russia with Love, and then later
later,
Royale.
yeah.
Always fucking Moonraker. And but it's also another contrast to Temple of Doom, because that movie spent its entire running time on one continent.
Mm-hmm.
And in this movie, we've already gone from America to Europe.
Sure.
So it's more of a globe-trotting movie, like Raiders was.
Yeah, that's true.
Where we went to a few different
Continents.
We went east. Yeah, a few different continents, but Temple of Doom is all, Asia.
Yeah.
Which is fascinating, and also, I think, better.
The right choice.
I can't quite explain why. It's more interesting. Like, you got to respect that sticking to your guns a little bit.
Yeah,
but
right,
anyway,
right.
They want to get back to the globe-trotting sense. So it's really interesting.
Well, it's just like at this point, it's becoming a convention of the series, right? It's in the way that James Bond does. It's where can you put Indiana Jones? Where have we not seen him yet?
And we didn't travel very far in the last movie.
What would impress an audience? By the time we get to Crusade, it's.
Yeah.
I think you're right in the sense of let's expand it more. Let's make sure we can. How will people be able to believe that we were able to film in Venice and get this much access to the canal and stuff like that?
Well, they didn't. I mean,
they got it for one day.
Yeah. And I got to say, they make the most out of it. There's details I've never seen before this viewing, because there's a lone kid coming off the water taxi in the background when they arrive. And I've got to think that's kind of Spielberg speaking to the idea of, like, absent fatherhood.
Mm.
There's just this kid coming off the water taxi on his own. Who's that kid? Where are his parents? Like the Indiana Jones we see at the beginning of the film is just this kind of feral child,
right,
wandering the streets of Utah.
I didn't notice.
If indeed Utah, I'd never noticed it until this watch, but then I learned that they had restricted access to this, so Spielberg is kind of pulling all this imagery very quickly, which is very impressive. He's working well under pressure, which I guess Jaws proves. You don't need this movie to prove that. You've got Jaws, but and we're introduced to our new indie girl,
Elsa. One
per film so far.
Yeah.
Which is like Bond girl, but also and she was also a Bond girl in the past.
She was, right.
So that's two Bond pulls for the price of one.
There you go.
And it's interesting because, again, this is where you realize, this is the first time we're post-Raiders. So, Temple of Doom, the prequel aspect, took care of Where's Marion.
Yeah, right.
Now, we're just going to move on and ignore it.
Right. Now we're allowed to ask the question, and the movie will say, go fuck yourself.
Yeah, right. We're just moving on. We're doing the Bond formula.
Where's Marion? May I introduce you to Elsa?
It's not what I asked. Well, I don't know. General thoughts about Ilsa? I mean, we could just talk as we go. I don't know.
We could talk as we go, I think. But
okay. My
general impression is, I think she's pretty winning in the role. I like her. I like the. It's there's something that's done well here that's not done well in the next movie, which
Agreed.
is there's a person kind of working both sides.
Yes, yeah.
And really for themselves. And here it works, and in the next movie it doesn't at all, really.
It's Ilsa's a really good combination of, you've got Marion in the original movie. Willie is the inversion of Marion, and then Ilsa, just like Donovan, she's the sort of lukewarm water.
Yeah,
the Derek Smalls
she lies between
of the two. She lies between them, but she's also her own thing. She's because she has her own arc in the movie,
and
she's
an
intellectual seduced by Nazism.
Yeah,
who uses her intellect to destroy.
But I also
the
think
Nazi
it's
overlords.
it's all
great.
I think it's all for her own purposes, and they do things in this movie that I think work for the character in the sense when we get to Germany and she's walking down that hallway, she has the diary, and she's almost crying at the visual of seeing books being burned.
That's where she was getting interesting.
Yeah. So they're smart enough at this point in the series to keep that character interesting.
I agree, and I think the filmmakers are so conscious of matching the period in history they're representing to the period in cinema
Mm-hmm.
that it's linked to, and they talk about this, and obviously in the next movie, making it a kind of alien movie is clearly influenced by it being set in the 1950s.
50s.
But I wonder here whether the choices with the narrative choices and character choices with Ilsa is motivated by the beginning of film noir in this period and the emergence of the femme fatale.
Yeah.
Because her arc totally follows that
fits
logic,
that.
right?
Yeah, fits
she
that.
makes a mistake.
To a T.
She makes a mistake, and in the end, she has to die because the Hays Code. Except it's 1989. No one gives a fuck about the Hays Code anymore.
Right.
Spielberg. So no, in the end, it was the right decision.
Mm-hmm.
Either I'm missing something, or this Roman numeral code is so simple, even Dan
So
Brown
easy.
could have written it.
So easy.
It is just 7 + 3 = 10, right? I'm not missing something here.
The idea that Elsa at one point says, "I can't believe I missed that." I agree with you. I can't believe you missed that.
I also can't believe how much of a dick Indiana Jones is about it.
Yeah.
Can't you see?
Can't you see?
7,
Look.
3.
7.
And that's the
3.
triple point, right?
Go for the 10. Where's the 10? And then, of course, it's the callback.
Yeah.
And then
it actually doesn't make sense because nothing in that code indicates 7 + 3 = 10. It could just as equally be 4.
Yeah, right.
I mean, he's essentially reading numbers off a page and acting like it's some big intellectual leap.
Yes. Well, can I ask you, what do you think of this stamp joke?
It's like the most basic comedy, and the thing that irritates me about it is it's introduced apropos of nothing. This guy is not a character in the movie.
Right.
And, again, I feel weird about saying that because I feel like I would be praising exactly the same thing in a James Bond movie, but Indiana Jones movies and Bond movies are different.
Mm-hmm.
There are key differences between us, and this is one of them. Like, I don't think the Indiana Jones formula can sustain, the wino on the bridge kind of character, which is what this librarian
That's how it kind of
is.
feels. I've always felt one of two ways. I kind of have a split personality about it because I think the performer is really funny.
Yeah.
But I don't think the joke is very funny.
And he looks like Albert Einstein, which can't be an accident.
Yeah.
But I think, the character should, when this movie works, the character creates the comedy. And because I don't know anything about who this guy is, it's not very funny.
It doesn't stick with you.
It's just the gag.
Yeah, that's all it. Yeah, right.
Yeah, and there's no sense of why he would be the kind of person who would accidentally mistake a very loud
noise somewhere else for the stamp. Right, exactly.
I mean, even, in Laurel and Hardy movies,
you have to suspend your disbelief quite a bit for that one.
Even in Laurel and Hardy movies, it's character comedy. That's what people forget. It's not just random slapstick. It's funny because Stan is the kind of person who would make this mistake.
Mm-hmm.
And that Ollie would react in this way, and that's why he's making this mistake.
Right.
It's just like, and that's the thing about slapstick that people don't understand. It's not just pies in faces or people slipping on banana skins. It's got to be, the good slapstick has got to be motivated by something. This just feels like, I mean, they could have filmed it 20 years later and put it in the movie.
Sure.
It wouldn't have affected, it wouldn't, it should feel like it was made at the time and part of the movie organically, and it just doesn't.
Yeah.
So, not a fan.
All right, we're on the same page.
People really like it, don't they?
I know, they love it.
People really enjoy it.
They think it's the funniest thing ever.
I tell you what I do like is the callback to that other Tom Stoppard line. where Indy says, you're so like your father, and Ilsa says, you're so like your father. She said, except he's lost and I'm not.
Yeah.
Which is the same as saying everybody's lost but me.
Yeah.
So he's learned nothing.
No lessons.
He's just a static line of character development. But it's also that, like, you can see where other writers have done a pass on the movie because he's like, wow, that dialogue's really good, and now it's terrible, and now it's good again. What's going on?
Totally. It feels uneven in that way, right?
Yeah. I like how Ilsa's matching Indy bogus fact for bogus fact. You know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of, especially this movie, there's a lot of sort of egregiously untrue things said about history and literature and everything. So
sure.
They're talking nonsense, but they're matching each other, which is the
okay.
important bit of
Fine.
it. So this is the first time the indie girl has been his intellectual equal, because Marion wasn't really pitched that way. She was his equal as an action hero.
Yeah.
But not as an academic.
She was just as tough as he was.
And Willie, with the greatest of respect, was not either.
With the greatest of respect. Now I'm even more offended.
Well, I don't
when
want
you
to be.
say
I'm
that
not
to
a
me.
I'm not a Willie basher, but the idea of the dumb blonde is central to the character.
Yeah.
It's how it's written.
It's how it. Yeah, exactly.
But I'm not saying that that's Kate Capshaw's fault or that Willie isn't a good character.
Now, is it just me, or is this tomb rather easy to find?
Well,
not unlike the puzzle of the Roman numerals.
If you can add 3 to 7, you can find it. So,
yeah.
And when you get down, well, first of all, we've got to talk about what I think is fan service done well.
Okay.
The Ark of the Covenant.
Yeah, I'll agree with that.
It's the beginning of a bad tendency in the series towards
exactly. Yeah.
But if you're gonna do it, this is the way to do it. Just like it. Ideally,
literally walking past it, and I like the. You're sure? I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, and although I love the conversation he has with Mutt about his Pancho Villa adventures in the next movie, I do think that there's a stark contrast there, right? There's sort of like, let me tell you about my adventures with Pancho Villa, and you could imagine a scene in which he's like, let me tell you, I know about this arc, right? Back in 1936 and blah, blah, blah. He just goes, pretty sure. And then they move on.
Done.
It's great. The Bone Torch is our kind of... the Bone Torch and the wall breaking is our periodic reminder that Indy is just a basic grave robber. Because this is Desecration 101. It's like, someone's body...
Yeah, he's not as altruistic as he may think he is.
Maybe he is Red Hulk. Maybe this was his first Red Hulk moment.
There you go.
Even though Harrison Ford doesn't know what a Red Hulk is. That doesn't mean he didn't recently play Red Hulk in a movie and not know about it.
Hey, kid, let's just film this piece of shit.
And then rats.
Oh, rats.
So more animal inversion, more up in the ante. I think there were more rats than any of the creepy crawlies or snakes that we saw in the previous movies.
Yeah, it was really interesting to learn too, because if you watching the making of stuff, they talk about if you want to have rats and you want to be sure that you can be safe, you just have to breed them all. So they bred like 2,000 rats on their own.
Yeah,
that's a lot.
And also we do some off-screen characterization of Henry Jones by talking about how he has
how he hates him. Yeah.
So both.
But I also respect that about
both the Jones boys.
They have their own phobias,
crippling animal phobias.
Yes. I like later when he says there were rats, Dad. Rats.
Rats.
But it's one of the things that I like about 1980s movies too, because now rats would all be digital. And
well, we don't have to. You don't have to. You don't
have to go far
into the future of the series to see where animals of that nature might be represented digitally rather than practically.
And you can see the difference between the two.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, Spielberg's not afraid as an 80s filmmaker to just throw an animal at someone's head.
No, yeah, right.
Right in Alison Duty's hair.
Yeah.
Just as the bugs were really climbing up Kate Capshaw's sleeves.
Not to mention the snake around Karen Allen's neck.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
And then they come out of the sewer straight into a speedboat chase, which is pure Moonraker. I tell you something, as a lover of Ford's movies in this period, I'm really happy to see the reappearance of his frantic jet lag hair.
Yeah, right.
The way he wears his hair at the beginning of Frantic.
Yes.
When he's coming into Paris and he's all jet lagged, and that happens with the water here.
It's kind of like what he does when he gets into the hospital clothes in The Fugitive. Doesn't he kind of,
absolutely. Yeah.
But I also, there are things I like within this boat chase. I love the not hearing each other correctly moment.
Mm-hmm.
Don't go through them. Go through them? Are you crazy? I like that.
Sure. Okay. I'll give that a pass. Not my favorite, but I'm okay with it.
I like because of how seriously the characters take it. It's one of the jokes where they're not winking. So that I appreciate,
Correct. Yeah, you're right. You convinced me. I don't believe that these backdrops are from the 1930s, though. It looks very much like 1980s industrial landscape in the background of these shots. And I think it's London Docklands, I believe, that they're filming in at, which would make total sense. It totally looks like London in the 80s.
I mean, I know that
the London of the Long Good Friday, basically.
I know that I think they were there for that close-up of the propeller.
And
then when it's chopping up the boat.
This is where we meet the Chasm and the Brotherhood.
Yeah.
Once again, these supposed villains have more moral authority than
our heroes.
My soul is prepared. How's yours?
How's yours?
It's like, it's like Indiana's like, yeah, you got me.
And that's one of the first moments, maybe not one of the first moments, but it's one moment that I can remember being in a movie, watching it as a teenager, and seeing that actor in that moment and realizing that's a good fucking actor. That guy's good.
Kazim is great. He nails both his scenes in this movie. And it's a bit of a Chad Alal situation where it's like, I want more. I want him to be a more significant part of the movie because he's such a good character actor. And I love the touch, like we fall victim to our own prejudices and we assume that they're like stock Arabic bad guys.
Yeah, right.
And it turns out that they're actually the
like you said, they're
better guys.
They're better than everybody else in the movie.
Everybody else in the movie.
Yeah.
And I think I don't know, that a slight apology for the racism in Temple of Doom, maybe, just to sort of like
perhaps
to sort of turn the racism on its head a little bit.
Yeah.
So I like that. And Kazim is the closest I think we get to Wuhan. He has a limited screen time. He's a supporting character, but the writing and the acting makes it land instantly.
Perfectly, right.
Yeah. And again, Marcus is still when you get back to the room. Marcus is still Marcus. Yeah. He's still intelligent and resourceful. He's the one who figures out he's seen something
Alexandretta.
in the book. It's a little bit, dementia memory, but okay, whatever. It's like it tantalizes you with the idea that this could be the last we saw of Marcus in the movie as well. Because at the end of the scene, they send him off, and you think, God, if he had ended on this high, we wouldn't have even noticed.
But yeah, exactly.
Weird wonky moment when he got into Venice. He'd be like, well, it was probably just travel sickness,
jet lagged. Yeah,
yeah, like that. So I feel like if Marcus's movie had ended here, it would have rescued Marcus.
Maybe. Well, they're about to figure some shit out and go off to the what is it, Brunwald Castle? Brunwald? Why don't we take a break?
The haunted house of this movie, yeah, absolutely, yeah.
We'll take a break.
George Lucas haunted house.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
I was just gonna say, Lucas finally gets his haunted house that isn't haunted. It's just filled with
Steven
Nazis.
Spielberg's like, okay, we'll give you a castle this time, okay?
Yeah.
Okay, but the next one's got to be all haunted house.
I want aliens next.
Yeah, it's not going to be a next over my dead body. Is there going to be a next one?
I'll be back. I'll be back. We'll be back right after this.
Cut this loser loose. I like to think I know something about beer, but nowadays even I get overwhelmed when confronted by the exhaustive selection of craft beers they have at bars, breweries, and even grocery stores. Back in the day you had one, maybe two craft beers to choose from, and if you were confused, you ordered a Guinness. But in beerstinations like San Diego, the craft beer options lately are in double, sometimes even triple digits. So what's a beer drinker to do? You need what I need, the Vegas Beer Guys. Your beer of choice should be a perfect blend of malt and hops. And so a live show about beer needs that same balance. And the Vegas Beer Guys matches beer expert Dan Aker with self-proclaimed beer novice Stephen J. Weiss. The results are eminently drinkable. They're on Facebook, they're on Instagram. They'll try new beers, they'll tell you about beer. Think of them as your beer Sherpas guiding you up a foamy-headed mountain to reach the peak of your pint. God, I need a beer.
Here we are in what will not be the last segment of Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade.
That's right. How ironic.
Yeah. Well, off we go. We are. I think we get another
Back on the
laser,
road.
right?
We do, yeah. Well, I mean, Indy and Ilsa have a. Well, this is.
They
this
do a
is
little
turning
kissing.
point. Well, they do a lot of ear sucking and
Yeah.
stuff that is rather unpleasant to watch. But it's also, this is where he decides he's going to trust Ilsa, apropos of nothing.
Right. But it does also feel kind of like a callback to conversations he had with Willie.
Yeah.
You know, this is his kind of foreplay.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree with that. It's slapping on a veneer of 1930s screwball romance, but behind that is a kind of 1980s lack of consent and toxic male behavior as well.
Yeah.
So
Absolutely.
yeah. Also,
And not
again,
be denied.
And Indy makes another big mistake here. He should have followed his paranoid instincts. And it's frustrating because he was withholding that information from her, and if he'd have carried on in that fashion,
He'd have been all right.
it would have all been different. Yeah.
Yeah.
A little more of that Fred C. Dubs would have helped him.
Well, what do you think of him as a Scottish tapestry viewer?
Well, that goes back to Bogart as well, because it's two homages for the price for one, because the commons. So he does the same thing in Blade Runner when he comes in pretending to be the entertainment officer.
Yeah.
In the club, and both of these come from The Big Sleep, where Humphrey Bogart pretends to be a kind of bookish first edition collector to bamboozle the bookseller, so it's kind of, it's just like it's something that Harrison Ford likes. He likes to do this Humphrey Bogart tribute in his movies, and he's he's obviously poking fun at Connery at the same time.
I don't mind telling you though, it still gets me every time he tells the butler to buttle off. I love that. Buttle off.
Yeah. And of course we're in this Germanic castle with lightning. We're going for the kind of gothic horror atmosphere, which is now weird given that Disney owns this property now. It feels very Disney, this castle. And this guy, the butler, plays a character in The Spy Who Loved Me as well, so there's another Bond connection.
Ooh, I didn't know that.
And
I think he's very funny, though.
I do, yeah, he's great.
If you're a Scottish lord? Is that what he says?
I am Mickey Mouse!
Mickey Mouse!
Which
Love
clearly
him.
he's not saying. It's clearly ADR'd in.
Yeah.
So they must have, like, so let him say something else and we'll see if we can get the rights to Mickey Mouse. Not a problem now.
Nope.
Though clearly they were pulling something different. I think it was Charlie Chaplin or something like that.
No, I don't know.
It is a different line.
I don't
if you
remember.
See
Yeah.
his lips don't fit what he's saying. And then this is where it's revealed that the movie's got Nazis in again.
So I was going to ask you, because I can still kind of remember, like, it always got a laugh in the theater. Nazis. I hate these guys. But I can remember my first viewing of this movie and him looking over and seeing Nazis and myself thinking, again? Nazis?
Again with the Nazis?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, they also, like, he talks about them like they're bed bugs.
Yes.
Nazis fucking everywhere. But it's, you know, essentially we're revealing that the villains of Raiders are also the villains here.
Yes.
Which is sort of like, it's like a Doctor Who episode where you realize the Daleks are behind it all.
Which, chronologically, that means they're the villains twice in a row. Time-wise,
yes.
for Indy himself. Yeah.
Which is why he hates Nazis so much, because he's just he thought he was done with them.
Yeah.
Which I guess is like it's a serial, you know. It's a serial convention too, isn't it? It feels very matinee serial.
Yeah.
You go back to the stock villains.
Mm-hmm.
And they're the most obvious stock villains that there are.
I also think it's interesting to see Indiana for the first time in his getup, but with a tie.
Yeah, it's a great look. I mean, Harrison
look.
Ford can pull off so many looks, but I like this I don't know, like business casual.
Totally.
Jones. That's how it was advertised for the action figure. Business casual Indiana Jones.
There you go.
He's there just like filling in payrolls.
We're walking down the hall. He notices the door that's wired, and he's going to pull out the whip and be jumping around. But from the moment he fucking goes through that window, this movie kicks into gear, and it's with 2 words. Well, 3, really. Junior and yes, sir.
Yeah. Right.
How much do they say about these 2 characters with Junior and him coming up after being concussed and saying, yes, sir?
Instant chemistry, the right amount of overlapping, timing,
so
tone.
Good.
The relationship dynamic, as you say, is clear from the second that it first arrives in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
Also, this is only the second use of the whip in the movie, first present-day use of it.
Yeah.
So, again, sparing use of the whip.
Always.
Yeah, and I think this movie applies. I think the rule of 3 applies to this movie as well. I think it's only used one more time in the movie. I don't know if we said, but it was the last use of it in Temple of Doom was to lasso Willie, which is perhaps not the best trilogy of whips there. Yeah,
Get over here, bitch.
Let's we've already gushed over Connery in the ranking episode, but I'm always amazed. It reminds me what a great character actor Sean Connery is, because he disappears into the character perfectly, and yet
completely
cast completely against type for what we know of his film stardom. His physicalization of the character is outstanding,
amazing,
even for a great actor, because the way he sits with that briefcase with the umbrella slid
absolutely
into it,
with it slid in, yeah.
I said this in the ranking episode. He looks like an old man on a bus.
Yes.
You know, he just or a bus stop. He puts the umbrella in and he sits there waiting for the bus to arrive. It's not what you expect from Connery, and it's also not really what you're expecting from Indy's dad as well. So it's the perfect combination.
Mm-hmm.
So many happy surprises happening here.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think you realize that you need this is why this shouldn't work, because you need someone who's a great character actor, who's willing to play against type, and has the kind of gravitas and movie star weight.
Yeah, you're right.
That a lot of the dialogue in this movie needs. So his reaction to Indy telling him about finding the shield.
Yeah. Oh, love it.
You need like a big Kirk Douglas performance in that moment, and
Well, and I
he gives
specifically
it.
like
a Walter Houston gold prospector dance, which is essentially what he
yeah,
does.
I like the moment when he finds out about it's when he finds out about Alexandretta.
Yeah, and that's flexing a totally different acting muscle.
Totally.
So that's why it could really have only been Sean Connery.
Right.
Otherwise, it wouldn't have worked.
Exuberant old man. You know.
But at the same time, subtle and nuanced. All those little
Sure.
kind of idiosyncratic touches.
Mm-hmm.
And
it's so genuine. It's so honest.
But it's so interesting that it's not that the jokes like are necessarily better, like Junior, yes, sir, Dr. Jones, and they both answer at the same time. It's not like they're better than the stamp gag or the bugle spitting jokes. It's
but
just
they work better.
It's like it's a simple joke done well instead of a basic joke that is forced.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's the difference. But it's weird how quickly that all kicks in at once.
Mm-hmm. Well, and some of it is character driven. I like that because he calls him Junior again, and he says, "Don't call me that, please." Mm-hmm. You know, he becomes such a little boy in the moment. You know,
it's such good writing,
and those are great little touches.
Well, also there's the sort of the forget Paris dimension of kind of, you know, observational comedy about parenthood, because, you know, I love all the way that his father is written is so accurate to how parents are. Like, he's saying everything that's happening out loud as it's happening. I mean, that's what parents do, right? You know, it's like Billy Crystal and Forget Paris driving around his father-in-law. He's just saying everything, and that's what it is. And, you know, he's continually commenting on everything that happens. When he said, "Look what you did! I can't believe what you did."
I was just gonna say, when he says that, when he kills the guards, "Look what you did! I can't believe what you did!" And he grabs him. You know, the framing of it from Spielberg is really great.
It was a delight. I don't know if you saw the same making of that I did, but it was a delight to see footage of Spielberg, Connery, and Ford on set imitating
like
Three Stooges.
Three Stooges, routines. Yes, I saw that.
Yeah, and you can see them trying to work it out. It's called, so Moe goes like that, and then Larry goes like this.
Yes.
And, you know, that you can see why they're talking about that, because of the physical comedy that they're doing in this movie is at that same level.
Yeah.
But it's great that we can just suddenly shift gears into a really good dramatic scene with the reveal of Ilsa's portrayal.
Right.
Because, again, Connery flexing a totally different muscle. This is his Bond film scene, right? Mm-hmm. He's just like, no, you know, don't trust her.
Don't trust her.
Women are bullshit. I'm Sean Connery. I know women are bullshit. I'm James Bond. I know women are bullshit. Because Indy's instincts about people are completely wrong. But
always, yeah.
It's like, and it's played. I like the way that it's played, the sort of devil and angel on the shoulder, but it's inverted. So he thinks that his dad is, you know, giving him bad advice,
right?
But he's the only one speaking sense in the entire scene.
He thinks he's the doddering old man who doesn't know what he's talking
so
about.
He plays it so deadpan as well. He just flatly contradicts everything that they say.
Exactly.
And this is our first female villain, isn't it, in the entire series?
Yeah.
So that's a new twist.
Yeah, right.
Women can be villains too. So I guess that's feminism.
for an Indiana Jones
movie. As I understand, my limited understanding of feminism, I believe that is the case. Yeah, and I think the femme fatale is baked into this.
Yeah, you're right about that for sure.
Her hairstyles look like Veronica Lake.
Right.
Barbara Stanwyck as well. This is where we find out Indy and his father are sleeping with the same woman. Which, I mean, even without the behind-the-scenes knowledge, you know was a Sean Connery choice, and it absolutely was. He had to fight for this.
Yeah, right.
He wanted to spice up the character and fuck over George Lucas's.
I mean, I just remember him
puritanical idea of the character.
Yeah, he had said something to Steven Spielberg about it could happen and it's funny, so we have to do it.
could have, and then it's funny. And apparently that's enough for Steven Spielberg.
That's all you need. Yeah.
But I just love the idea that Connery's working behind the scenes to gradually spin his character into a womanizer. There's like no hint of it up until that point.
Right.
And it's just like, you know, that's the star persona, isn't it? It's like, if I'm in a movie, I've got to be sleeping with the sexiest woman in the movie.
Right.
Because I'm Sean Connery.
It's funny that he's willing to do everything he can for the character, but there are a few things where he's like, now let's not forget, I'm still Sean Connery.
let's not forget what people
I'm
come
still
here for.
Sean Connery, you know.
And it's the daily double of villain fake outs, because this is the same scene where Donovan is revealed to be.
I told you not to trust anybody, you dumbass.
And I feel like doing that kind of back-to-back is not very effective.
Yeah, I mean, you know...
Or they should have just done it They should have had it
at the same time,
yeah. Because it wants you to reinvest and then... Mm-hmm. And then be surprised again, which you're not. Because
at that point.
If Ilsa's bad, then Donovan...
Then, of course, he's got to be in on it.
Yeah. And I think we covered the rest of this scene... Because it goes all the way to the Marcus jump cut, which we both like.
Right.
But
it retcons the character completely.
I kind of wish Indy was telling the truth about Marcus. That's the other movie.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
If it cut to, like, you know, Marcus driving a Jeep, you know, in Egypt, like pushing Nazis off a Jeep over a cliffside.
He's got his own mini movie going on.
Yeah. And then he fist bumps Salah, and then they get on camels and go off into the desert.
Let's get a goat for dinner.
Sadly, but here was the return of Salah.
Yeah.
Who, let's face it, was already big in Raiders. I don't mean physically big, I mean performance-wise.
Yeah.
But now he's bigger.
Oh, but much.
Like, you know, John Rhys Davis pushed it as far as he could in Raiders. With the right. But that was as far as it went, really. You still felt that Salah was a real person at this point.
Well, not just that, but he has that moment right after where he apologizes to us by apologizing to Indy.
So Indy.
But in this one, he's more clownish. It's it's like he's become the court jester.
Yeah. The nights are getting longer and Larry's getting larger.
Yeah.
Also, it's interesting that Salah is bamboozled by the same routine that his brother pulled on the Nazis in Raiders.
Totally, right?
So it's both an inversion and a revenge at the same time. The Nazis are like, I remember when you hid from us in that square. We're going to do the same thing over again.
Well, and meanwhile, Henry's starting fires.
Yeah,
and I think I mentioned this in the ranking episode, but the idea of the dad what. So the comic beats are coming quick and fast the second Henry comes into the film, but like you said, they're always pitched a little bit better. They might even be dumb jokes, but they're performed better. They have more weight to them.
Yeah. Also, when Ilsa is sucking on Indy's lips and ears, it makes you realize that instead of food, sex is the gross out comedy in this movie.
Right, yeah.
Because you get that saliva trail between the lips. It's just fucking horrible. Why does Indy have a Shamrock cigarette lighter?
Don't know.
It looks like it's from a sports bar.
Yeah.
In the modern day, it doesn't look like it's from the late 1930s.
It looks like it's from...
That's
what's
a
that place called? Hannigan's?
Lighter.
Shenanigans.
Yeah. Shenanigans. But this is a great bit.
Yeah.
You know, sequels are on perilous ground when they introduce a relative.
Mm-hmm.
But this scene reminds you that with when you see the kind of the way that the fire plays out, you realize that Henry can build on the comedy that Indy already brings to the movie, because it's just another generation's worth of incompetence.
Yeah, exactly.
But I think it's great, and all of Connery's reactions to the fire as well. The sort of like this, like the not quite accepting what he's done.
Yes.
Yeah, and he's narrating. It's great because he's
The
narrating
room is on
that's
fire.
happening.
He's our situation is not improved.
That's a great one. I love the room is on fire because, it's needless exposition, but it makes sense from that character.
Yeah.
He just wants to be the one to say that the room is on fire. When Donovan, so there's this weird little mini scene when Donovan reads the communique from Hitler. I don't know. Someone in the Nazi elite. And he says a line that I feel like was just made for the trailer.
Yeah, no, totally.
Which is,
it was from the trailer.
Germany has declared war on the Jones boys, because
Absolutely.
that's not what's happening in any sense. Germany doesn't give a shit as long as they get the Grail diary about the Jones boys.
Sure.
It's just...
But it's a good line for the trailer.
It is just, it's like the hats, right? It feels like more hats.
Totally. And it's so funny, too, because what's his name? The guy who says goodbye in Germany and punches Indiana Jones.
Michael...
He wants to kill him right there. But they tell him no. And it's like he has to go downstairs just to have Donovan say Germany's declared war on the Jones boys, just to give them enough time to set the room on fire, find the secret door in the fireplace, and get down to the boats where they're going to steal the motorbike.
And I draw the line at the collapsing stairs. I think it's like, I don't like it when the slapstick is fortuitous or accidental. I like there to be some to come out of and build the character, and that doesn't either. Because it's just a lucky accident.
Exactly. I don't ever walk into a small room and my first thought is, well, there's got to be some sort of lever to reveal another room.
And this is where, when they escape, this is where Indy has his looking off screen moment, where we don't know what he's looking at. Mm-hmm. So this is the only other stylistic linchpin of the trilogy, as well as the map.
You're right.
This is the only thing that's commonly happened in all three movies.
Mm-hmm.
And then we're into a bike chase, which I was surprised to learn was a reshoot.
And then, I keep kind of mentioning my original memories of seeing the film. I can remember there's things to like in this bike chase, but the one overall thing I remember thinking in 1989 when I saw it was, this looks a lot like California. And that's because it is California.
And I think their instinct is wrong. I think this would have been a great time to let the movie breathe a little, but they inserted there's a little bit of droid factory here, of kind of like, they felt they say in that making of documentary, we didn't feel like we had enough action,
right?
But how can you think that? There's set piece after set piece.
It's all, yeah.
And if you cut straight from them escaping to them having the conversation about the Grail diary, that's your perfect kind of palate cleanser for that moment.
It's almost worth it, though, to see the look on Henry Jones Sr.'s face.
Oh, it's great, yeah.
It's so good.
And that's, one of
his look of displeasure.
Yeah.
when young Henry is so pleased with himself is fucking amazing.
And I love, and this might be a controversial statement, but I love the connective tissue in Crystal Skull to that moment where he does the same to Mutt on the bike.
Oh yeah.
He gives him a look just like his dad.
That's right.
But this whole sequence is, I think it's like, it feels like it was done in a rush, because it's sort of like, it's like half recovered memories of the opening of Lawrence of Arabia and Matter of Life and Death and those kinds of movies.
To me, it looks more like an episode of Chips.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that at all. I think that's Spielberg's brain, because he's trying to make something very fast,
Yeah.
like as if it was a TV show, and trying to use all the cinematic language that is always in his brain.
Mm-hmm.
They managed to sort of crowbar in a Arthurian reference with the jousting.
With the jousting, yeah.
And we haven't really talked about the Holy Grail, because they take it in a biblical direction, which the mythology, the original recipe mythology of the Grail doesn't have. It's more secular, but they're taking it in a biblical direction. So they're constantly going between the Bible and King Arthur in terms of their mythology in the movie.
Mm-hmm.
They're kind of playing both sides of the aisle in that respect, which is great. I mean, I think it's done really well.
Yeah, I don't have a problem with it.
No. I think that's absolutely fine. When he says "into the lion's den," that's a dual reference to the Bible and King Arthur.
Sure.
So I think that's great. They're leaning into the Raiders of it all a bit too much with the Armies of Darkness line. And John Williams clearly picks up on that, because he throws in a little Raiders.
Yeah. Totally.
Da, 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 da. I just feel like it's like, why did you put that in there? I might have got away with it. They might not have known it was a pull from Raiders at that point.
What do you think of that moment of Jesus Christ and the slap, and that's for blasphemy?
It's performed really well.
Yeah.
Again, it's that when you learn that Lucas wanted him to be kind of a puritanical character, it makes more sense, because what kind of going back to the last movie, what kind of Hindu serves his guest meats? What kind of conservative Christians going off sleeping with women willy-nilly?
Yeah,
quite literally willy-nilly in his case. So there are these competing versions of the character, but Connery is the man to reconcile all of that.
Totally, right.
That's why it's such a big ask, and he's the only one who
that can pull it off.
The ferocity of the slap is great. I mean, it's it's not a stage slap at all. He's learned how to slap from the Nazi. Because isn't the glove slapping in the last scene with the Nazis as well?
Yeah, the Nazi slaps him with the glove.
But
I also like, because it's
like
also
Nazi, that's total stock villain Nazi. Like, Nazis only do that in movies. I don't think there's any recorded historical instance of a Nazi slapping anyone with a glove outside of a movie.
We'll have to get our researchers on that one. But I like the flavor of it. This conversation between them. I like that moment where Indiana is talking about this is an obsession and Mom never understood it.
Yeah.
And this is something they just kind of flat out disagree about.
And it's done, like the mother backstory, done in a couple of lines.
Yeah.
If the lines are good enough, that's all you need.
Yep.
I mean, I don't feel like I need to know any more about Indy's mother.
No.
I mean, I do, because I've seen Young Indiana Jones, but I've actually learned no more from watching Young Indiana Jones than I learned from these two lines. So that tells you everything you need to know about how well it's written. And then we're burning books.
We're burning books, and we're stealing back diaries. This
is where it feels like Spielberg is looking ahead to Schindler's List, because the Nazis in Raiders of the Lost Ark are very much stock villains.
Mm-hmm.
This is very specific, right? This is like historical political reality that's being represented on screen. Yeah. We didn't really need this level of historical period detail, but we've got it because Spielberg is leaning towards, actually kind of representing the Nazi. There's a scene later on where he also throws in some, kind of historical Easter eggs about the Nazis.
Mm-hmm.
But this is the start of it, right? This is where it gets kind of factual, and obviously it's a prompt to see another side of Ilsa as well.
So yeah, there's really that, and I actually kind of, I've always kind of liked the joke of running into Hitler and Hitler signing the diary.
Again, it's like it ramps up to Young Indiana Jones, where he meets a celebrity every week from history. But this iteration of it, I'm fine with the fact that it's the man who's played Hitler more times than than any other actor in screen history is what really makes it for me. I mean, obviously he's Admiral Ozzel, right, from Empire Strikes Back as well. That's what he's kind of famous for in Lucasfilm.
Oh, so I was just going to ask you, I wasn't sure what else he'd been in, but I was
He's
going
played
to say
Hitler a number of times.
I was going to say he is great. Great
Essentially,
Hitler.
They got the world's most famous Hitler impersonator.
Yeah.
It's kind of a Naked Gun move, where they get that Queen lookalike who's the Queen in everything.
Totally.
But it almost feels like he's getting an autograph from Michael Sheard, not Hitler. And it's interesting because, you know, I'm saying that the set pieces are packed really tight in the movie, but it does feel like there's a flow and progression to events that,
yeah,
like modern blockbuster movies don't necessarily have. It doesn't feel episodic. Like the map helps because we're moving geographically
over places
every time we get to a new set piece. It really helps break it up. Although, and the scene
I mean, Spielberg's smart enough. We can, do a close in on a sign that says Berlin, and then we go to Berlin, and then how are we going to get out? The first thing he's going to show you is the Zeppelin.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
right. So there's that. He knows how to. Create that flow.
He does,
yeah.
And I think that's a lost art. I think that's why a movie that was not directed by him is not so good. It's interesting. I mean, we obviously going back to Jiminy Glick, Spielberg's got his big beef with the Nazis, but he's enough of an artist to sort of recognize game from other designers because he's kind of simultaneously enjoying the Nazi imagery while decrying it.
Mm-hmm.
Because he films it in a way that's like, there's a reason why everyone fell for this. It looks beautiful.
You're right. Yeah.
It's that's more, to me, that's a more interesting artistic approach. Although it's great in the making of where he's directing the guys who are doing the Hitler salutes, and he's like, with your other hand you can cross your fingers.
Go ahead and cross your fingers. Yeah, I love that.
But he kind of revels in that imagery in a way that's like, he's seen those Leni Riefenstahl movies, and he's seen, he understands why people went for it because they had like this incredible propaganda system that made beautiful movies that people, fell in love with. So it takes a true filmmaker to recognize that, I think.
Right.
And then, the Zeppelin and the Flying Aces, we see some...
No ticket.
What are supposed to be, I think, like famous early aviation, German aviation kind of SARS, giving a guided tour of the Zeppelin.
Okay.
To tell you what, the newspaper joke always bothers me.
Really?
It's half choreographed. It should either be such a halfway house.
Oh, yeah.
Both either what it should. I know it's really frustrating. And Spielberg sometimes his jokes are a little underbaked, and you're just let it rise a little more.
Mm-hmm.
Because Henry is in the room. Like, it's not the two guys with the newspaper. You think that's Indy and his dad. But it only works if Indy and his dad both come into the room. It doesn't work if Indy's dad is already in the room, but he's just not the guy you think it is. It would have been such a stronger gag if those guys pulled down the newspaper and it was two different guys, and then Indy and his dad walked through. Sure. I mean, that's how The Simpsons would do it. And therefore, that's why it would be good.
Well, I thought you were going to speak specifically about, the...
Oh, no ticket?
The cane on the newspaper. That joke where Henry has to look kind of to the cane and slowly look up in a way that feels like a cartoon that wouldn't, that doesn't really ring true.
It does, except it does ring true because, and again, I'm sure Connery and Spielberg thought about this, he's not wearing his glasses.
Oh, okay. All right.
So he's a sense that he just can't even see who it is.
Right.
So that
I'll give it a
cartoon That moment of cartoon realization is as much when I don't have my glasses on. Oh, it's the dancing. But yeah, I mean, there are problems comedically in these scenes, whichever way you cut it.
Well, but it's
The back projection's not great either.
No.
But again, 1989 was a busy year for ILM. That's all you need to say.
I give them a pass.
Yeah, and they're still in a stage where they're experimenting with all of this. So that's the other reason I give them a pass, is that they're not saying this is perfect. They're just trying to push the envelope.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of a tale of two jokes, because the stuff with what you were talking about in terms of checking on the people, like it would be better if they came in. But once you get them alone together, talking to each other, then
what
it's...
a scene. Best scene in the film.
Best scene in the movie, right?
Just the complete...
You left just when you were getting interesting?
Oh.
What a line.
I mean, that's the one that always stands out to me. And then this time, there was other lines that just delighted me in their complexity and nuance.
Mm-hmm.
When he says, "I was a wonderful father," and it's like, oh yeah, he believes that. He does, right? It's not as simple as, "I'm apologizing for not being a good father. I did the best I could under the circumstances." He's like, "No, I was great. It.
Yeah.
My approach was not because of circumstances. My approach was the right thing to do.
Carefully planned."
And I can't help but think this is all Tom Stoppard, because like they are... I mean, the way that they're performed is beautifully performed by both of them. The power dynamics between them, and they just do it by shifting their bodies back and forth. And the script knows where to move on.
Yeah. Do I hear a complaint? No, a regret.
Mm-hmm.
That kind of back and forth is really fantastic between the two of them.
And again, I love that the Crystal Skull picks up on this. Like the last time we had a drink together, you had a milkshake, and then of course he meets Mutt in a diner. It's great. It's such a great pull. But you really get a sense of these two guys who see the world very differently.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
There's no common ground between them, but they still love each other, which Spielberg is very good at directing that dynamic with people.
Yes.
It's his forte as a director.
Absolutely.
I think.
I do want just one line of explanation as to why he now can fly a plane.
Well, they explain it, I think. No?
Not really.
Fly, yes. Land, no. That's a Temple of Doom reference.
It's a Temple of Doom reference, but he didn't know how to fly in that movie.
He was getting there.
She says,
"Can you fly
the plane?" She says, "You know how to fly this plane, don't you?" He says, "No. Do you?" He doesn't know how to fly a plane.
But what does he say after that? He says, "How hard can it be? Look, there's the fuel, and we're checking this." And then he notices there's no fuel, and so this line is completely accurate. It's also actually one of the only explicit references to Temple of Doom in any of the following movies, which saddens me.
Yeah, that's bad.
The next one is in Dial of Destiny, and this is not even overt; it's just implied.
I would prefer just a slight nod to, I learned along the ways you gotta take a lesson or two. I didn't get as far as landing.
Some past experience taught me it might be useful to know how to fly a plane.
Yeah.
No, I like it because it's sort of like, I have successfully flown a plane. I have never successfully landed a plane. Well, it's also eerily prophetic of Harrison Ford's later life as well.
Totally, right?
When you hear that line, you're like, I'm really glad he didn't die in that plane
It's
crash.
Still true to this day. Knows how to fly, doesn't know how to land.
But think, if he'd have died in one of his many plane crashes over the past few years, that we'd have never been able to watch that scene without crying.
Right.
So we're lucky that he just fucked up his leg.
Or
whatever it was.
Well, we're about to take on some Nazis in the plane and then meet a knight. Why don't we take one last break and then we'll come back?
That makes it sound so exciting. You make it sound like you reduce everything to a video game.
Well,
It's like we're gonna fight some Nazis and then we're gonna meet a knight, and the knight's gonna come out. You have won. Holy great!
you have chosen wisely. We'll be right back. If you like podcasts like I do, boy, do I have a treat for you. You need to
Stay on target.
and check out the Sounds and Cinema podcast. Listen as your host, sound designer and music creator Tony Parham, and co-host, musical performer and sound lover Derek Hansen, D-Rock if you're nasty, and I am, discuss all things sound related to film, television, stage, and theatrical productions. They discuss environmental sounds, bioacoustics, dialogue, the nature of communication through sound, but as an added bonus, they drink beer and try to
Stay on target.
find them wherever you get your podcasts and listen to the pure mania of a man who can charitably be described as Doug, the dog from Up, and another man with a soothing and sultry voice trying to get that man to
Stay on target.
That's the Sounds and Cinema podcast. Tune in and listen to the sounds they are creating just for you. Here we are, back once again to finish up with The Last Crusade, not the last movie in the series.
No. So was that their mistake, calling it The Last Crusade?
Yeah, I was just thinking that
if they hadn't called it The Last Crusade, would no one have ever thought of making another movie?
Exactly. It just occurred to me that they called this movie The Last Crusade.
Yeah.
And not the last. Yeah.
Right.
Because it's kind of double meaning. Because they talk about the Crusades, and this can be the last Crusade, but...
Yeah, and it's Indy's last adventure.
But it's
so,
Indy's supposed to be
say,
Indy's last adventure, right?
Even the title is waving goodbye, like you said.
Yeah.
With one hand. It's like the Nazis. It's
got
his
fingers crossed, totally. Well, our boys, our heroes, are going to get onto this plane, and I think we've already kind of discussed this, but...
We have, yeah. Shoot Connery. I mean, again, like, it's good. It's great when you see Harrison Ford debunking the Bond mythos, but when you actually see James Bond doing it in an Indiana Jones film, when it's sort of like you've never seen, Sean Connery's James Bond miss, or I guess suppose like hit a target like that,
right.
like mistakenly,
or even before the target. When he's just saying 11 o'clock, Dad.
Yeah.
He pulls out his pocket watch.
Yeah.
What happens at 11 o'clock?
It's part of Connery's sort of post-Bond plan was to sort of do everything he could to distance himself from that character, and this is another example of him doing that. I mean, obviously the peak of that is wearing a diaper in Zardoz. Because then, that will stain any memory of James Bond. But this is similar. It's like seeing him as fallible and fucking up all the time.
Yeah.
It's not what we expect from a Sean Connery character. And he not only pulls it off, but does it with
the look on his face. Yeah.
Totally. And it's fantastic. And you get this, it's almost like he's really aiming for it.
Son, they got us.
Yeah, and so I think all that is wonderful. Like the effects are ropey here and there. I love that everything that involves their exchange is great.
Right.
So when they get onto the ground and the exchange they have at the wall.
Oh my God!
Their timing.
It's one of my favorite parts of the entire movie, just because the timing is so good.
And that's the thing. Like that they've tuned into this kind of father and son way of speaking where the son doesn't even let the father finish because he knows exactly what he's going to say.
Right, they're shooting us. I know, Dad. He's so angry when he says, I know, Dad.
He's just waiting. he's waiting for it to come out, and he stands there and waits. He knows it's going to happen, and before he's even finished saying, those people were trying to kill you, he's already saying, I know, Dad.
Happens to me all the time.
Well,
and the way he just puts his briefcase back into his chest.
Happens to me all the time. So I love that. I love that exchange because of that.
Yeah, I do too. And then we already kind of talked about the man that they inadvertently killed by leaving him in the desert and stealing his car.
Well, there's also the Spielberg seems to love this joke, but again, it goes a little bit over my head. If he really likes the idea of the pilot looking at them as he goes through
we
the
talked
tunnel.
about that, I think, in the ranking episode, because it's strange. He really likes that moment.
Joke. Yeah, not a funny joke to me.
It's not a great joke, and also it's punctuated by the guy dying in an explosion once he gets out of the tunnel, you know?
I mean,
but it's part of
I
that
think...
sanitized violence I was talking about in the ranking episode, where there's something that's... I don't know. Steven Spielberg is really the only director I can think of that does it as well as he does. I can't really think of another director that can show us truly violent things happening and make us laugh.
Yeah, he's got that duality. He can play both sides of the aisle better than perhaps any other filmmaker.
Yeah.
Yeah, it doesn't really work for me. And you can see what they're going for, this kind of North by Northwest style sequence, but it's a lot of low hanging fruit, put it that way. But the way it ends, I think, is spectacular.
Okay, I was going to ask you because I like the umbrella birds. Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's great because there's a nugget of Bond in there. The idea of kind of using his umbrella as a gadget
and his brain.
And using his umbrella as a gadget.
But it's also includes him going.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And then and you have this again, a very violent kill, which Spielberg again is good at concealing the gravity of that.
Yeah, suddenly he's okay with it because he's just strolling with that umbrella after he causes the death of that pilot.
And the violent kill then leads into a tender moment between Indy and his father, which is great.
Mm-hmm.
When he's walking along the beach, misquoting Charlemagne. By the way, as Indiana Jones Minute, they did the research on this. Charlemagne never said anything close to this.
Okay.
And apparently never would. Like, this totally goes against whatever philosophy he had. But it's lovely, just him strolling on the beach with the umbrella,
it's really funny.
And, the first time Indy sort of sees him as a man.
Yeah.
And not just as a contemporary, not just his father. It's a great moment. But then I think sort of one of the least successful scenes in the film comes directly after this.
The prince?
Alexei Sayle is once again the second brown face in this movie. We never talk about how Salah is brown face. It's interesting to me. I'm really surprised that 2023 got back with allowing this Welshman to play an Egyptian. But anyway, here we've got British comedian Alexei Sayle playing this. This scene is weird for so many reasons. Not least that. Like the specificity of it, like Republic of Hatay, and originally like, well, where is that? What is that? And then if you look into it, you find out that it was the Republic of Hatay for like 18 months.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
Like it was Republic. Like they, I guess, setting it in this period, they had no choice to call it, but it was only like the Republic of Hatay for like 18 months between two coups.
Wow.
It's such a weirdly specific detail.
Talk about timing.
And, this is another one of Spielberg's kind of historical talking points, which is that they're trying to buy off the prince with Nazi gold stolen from Jewish people, which they say donated by Germany's citizens.
Some of the nicest, the grandest German families.
Yeah, exactly, which is, code
against
for
their will.
Jewish families. Yeah, code for Jewish families. So I like that. I like that touch. But in the same way that I can feel like I can detect a Tom Stoppard line when I hear it, I also
here's a non one.
I can detect lines that George Lucas wrote. This Rolls Royce scene
Totally.
when he starts describing the Rolls Royce from, nose
And I
to
even
tail.
like the color.
I was just like, George Lucas came in and wrote this scene. It's like, hey, George, you know about cars. And maybe the worst joke in the movie, the most groan-worthy joke ends the scene, I think, with "Tanks, you're welcome."
Mm-hmm.
It's like a inserted sitcom scene.
Yeah.
And does it
It
actually
feels
do
very
anything
Three's
for the
Company.
movie?
It feels
Does it
on
do
that
anything
level.
Does it do anything for the movie? I mean,
No.
it's kind of weirdly, it's analogous to what happened when the crew arrived in Jordan. They were treated like royalty by royalty.
Yeah.
When they got there. So there's a kind of an on-screen.
I believe the
off-screen thing
princess
going on
was
as well.
even like driving Steven Spielberg to the set a few days.
But it doesn't even make sense on that level because it's not a very flattering representation of Middle Eastern royalty.
Right.
So, I
always
it's
just
an odd...
try to move on to the next great joke, which is, we're well out of range, Dad.
Yeah.
It's another Jones fucking up moment, and I love it.
Every time I watch it, I think, would we have been questioning where they got the tanks if this scene wasn't in the movie? And I don't think we would.
I wouldn't. Yeah, totally. I would think the Germans have resources.
That's it. It's so
Like,
easy, isn't it?
It's very simple.
It's such an obvious leap of logic.
Yeah.
And this is where it's sort of blink and you could be in the penultimate scene of Raiders.
Yeah,
Because it's
totally.
Indy up on a high ledge with the Nazis down below. And Raiders Marcus is back for a moment. He has one of his lucid...
He has a lucid moment.
Because he sort of warns them that they're going on a fool's errand.
Yeah.
And then the Brotherhood return, which kind of we needed to see them again at least once. I think.
For them to matter, right?
For them to matter. And what doesn't make sense though is why the Brotherhood aren't still trying to kill Indy and his father as well as the Nazis.
Yeah.
Isn't it the idea that they're supposed to protect the Grail against anyone who's trying to steal it?
Yes.
Yeah. They also don't explain why.
Maybe he takes him at his word that he just wants to get his father back, so... You know.
But when he sees him with his father, he must be like, this guy played me.
Yeah, right. This guy's...
He's worse than these Nazis.
The worst part is he's kind of right. It's not
he's not wrong. As I said, the Brotherhood are probably the best people in any of these movies that we've seen.
Yeah.
And they only appear when we have a plot point we need to cover because they're the only way that Indy found out where his dad was. And now they can point the way to the Grail.
Mm-hmm.
So...
Now, what do you think of this whole tank action scene?
Again, like all of this movie, the emotional father-son stuff in the scene really gets to me.
Yes.
There's never a time when Henry's crying out for his son that doesn't get from the tank.
Doesn't
get me. And now I'm a father. I'm an absolute wreck every time I hear it.
Mm-hmm.
But there's a lot of fluff and nonsense too.
There is, and it's funny because
when Marcus gets in the tank, when Henry gets in the tank and hear Marcus do this old Hull College handshake, and then Marcus starts doing chicken wings,
right?
You just like, do we really need this?
Not to mention, not a great plan. Like I'm just gonna slip into that tank, get Brody, and then we'll just walk right back out. And I think the movie has to do some heavy lifting. I mean, there's a lot of action stuff that you can enjoy and is thrilling or fun or exciting to watch. But Indy on a horse, just battling the tank, like the movie is, trying to show you how he can get away with that. But there's also guys in like trucks right behind him with 30 guns. So the movie has to kind of do some heavy lifting to make you believe that all of this could actually happen.
Agreed.
So I think there's a little like 2 steps forward, 1 step back throughout the entire scene.
I think that's accurate. They feel like they have to put a comic tinge on everything.
It also
I don't
looks
know
like
why
it's filmed in California.
I also don't understand why they think, again, there's like jokes they think are funnier than we do.
Mm-hmm.
Salah's brother-in-law's car, not interested.
Gotta have the camels.
Give him something better to do
Yeah.
than continually talk about his brother-in-law's car and how he has to pay him off with camels.
I said 0 camels. That's 5 camels.
Yeah, it just goes on and
It just never stops.
Because they got nothing for Salah to do. That's the problem.
Yeah, you're right.
Except be this kind of, colorful sidekick of old.
Mm-hmm. But like you said, it's punctuated. It's real. It's great.
Mm-hmm.
There are moments that make me cry. There are moments that make me laugh. When Indy comes up behind them and looks over the cliff behind them and kind of nods his head, like that always gets me a laugh. When Henry Sr. is crying out for his boy, that always gets to me. I even like the, it seems a little too on the nose, but I like the moment of the push in on Indy's face with the hat blowing off his head. I'm okay with that. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, another couple of kind of Bond points is that this point in the movie that I'm reminded of that Julian Glover's arc in this movie is exactly the same as his character in For Your Eyes Only. Beat the same arc as Christoph in that movie, which is fascinating given the parallels between the two and the fact that Julian Glover was a Bond villain a few years ago, just as Alison Doody was a Bond girl a few years ago. And this movie also has the Octopussy problem of too many villains.
Yeah, right.
Because we like they never,
we're deep.
The Vogel is like one villain too many.
Yeah, exactly. Once we get
so when Indy's fighting him, it doesn't feel climactic. It doesn't feel like it's anything that needs to happen in the movie. And then you know that really callous joke of the gun through the 3 bodies, which looks like an outtake from Temple of Doom. It's so dark.
Yeah, right.
I like the pen trick though, because it's another, Bond pull, the pen gadget. Except it's not it's like the umbrella. He's using it as a gadget, but it's not a gadget.
But it's not a gadget.
He has to use what's actually in it.
And then Brody has to say what we're all thinking,
which is
the pen is mightier than the sword.
Oh, Marcus is there at this point to make Henry look cool at this point.
Yeah, right.
That is his only job in these scenes. Yeah, and again, when Indy's covered with that dust, it reminds me of that key distinction between this and the Bond films. It's like it's the grooming.
Sure, right.
Difference.
Yeah.
It's like Bond would never let himself get this covered in dust.
Sure.
Yeah, and there's the kind of weird body horror moment of the Vogel screaming into the lens as he falls.
Yeah, and there's
the effect doesn't quite work, and it feels
because it's also
anomalous to the movie's tone as well.
Yeah,
because there's not much body horror in this movie compared to the last 2.
But effects wise, were the model work would actually work if there wasn't a body attached to it. When you don't get the animated version of coming straight down to the camera, and it actually the one after that when it hits, that just the model work on the tank really looks good and works.
Oh yeah.
But when you attach the body to it, it throws it off and makes it look not as good as it is.
And I think they were going for there's a better version of this later on in this movie, but I think they were going for a kind of Raiders melting face moment as well.
Yeah.
Which they do get eventually in the movie.
But you're also right about Vogel. Because Vogel has not become he's not the Pat Roach that we want and need.
Yeah. He's in between henchman and villain. He's in between henchman and secondary villain.
Yeah, right.
So that's not a comfortable place to be. Yeah, I'm fine with it. With like the hat flying off again. Like, I feel like I've said this before that the hat could have gone in Raiders and I would have been fine with it. but now we're so attached to the hat that he has to get the hat back, and they literally have to throw it back into the frame.
Mm-hmm.
It's the only way he can get it back. I do actually like that moment though, when the hat rolls back in, because they make
I
no
do
attempt
too.
to make it seem plausible. It's just
Yeah.
like, here's your hat,
Right.
go to the end of the movie.
Now go get the Grail. God damn it.
Yeah, now go finish this movie.
Yeah.
The hug between them, when they're reunited,
Mm-hmm.
the hug is glorious. I love
That
their
gets me
facial
too.
choices. And this is the only kind of moment where you see Salah really emoting, and it's great. You
Mm-hmm.
realize John Rhys Davis would have, if they had given him some emotional weight,
He could have done quite a bit.
He could, yeah, because he's great. And Marcus is just a waste of space at this point.
I mean, that's part of the problem.
Counting magical wands in the air.
Right.
Whatever he's fucking doing.
The bench is too deep. You can't have four people deep on the bench of an Indiana
Crystal
Jones
Skull
movie.
would disagree with you. They would say it's not enough. That's too few.
One of the many
sidekicks.
problems, sir.
Yes,
Thank you.
exactly. I agree. You're right. Although, if you, the thing is that, not that I want Salah to be more comedic at all, but
Mm-hmm.
it makes more sense if you flip it, where Marcus is the one, as both of their lifelong friends, who enjoys this moment, and Salah's the one who's all but he and but
Yeah,
you and but
right,
they.
right.
You know, that would kind of make more sense character wise.
Yeah,
even
right.
though I don't want to see any of it.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
I don't want it to be in the movie, but it's wrong whichever way you look at it.
All right. Well,
And then that turn to camera where Connery's like,
yes,
we're so near the end.
we're so close. Come on, boy.
Again, waving goodbye. We're waving goodbye before the literal wave goodbye. It
And
feels
then-
like total breaking the fourth wall, and then the hat comes in. And it's
yeah.
yeah.
But again, all of that is like actual tip of the hat to saying goodbye. Like we're just, they're coming fast and heavy now with those moments.
And it's it's established itself as a meta-filmic franchise, so I don't have any problem with moments like that.
Mm-hmm.
Clearly, if I like the opening of Temple of Doom. And then we're in Petra.
Yeah, that now it's time for booby traps.
Yeah, it's such a good idea to use this practical location for a mystical locale that even Mortal Kombat decided that they wanted to
Yeah,
follow.
you're right. Yeah.
And it suddenly feels like we're back in Temple of Doom with the headless soldiers and people watching behind rocks.
Right.
And then Marcus goes cross-eyed at gunpoint.
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of funny, like off mic, when we made our back to school reference, and I immediately said, imagine Rodney Dangerfield as Marcus in this movie. This is a moment of the movie that would be improved if they if it was guest starring Rodney Dangerfield as Marcus for this scene.
The gun goes into his face, and he says,
yeah,
"No
he's
respect."
He's just adjusting his tie.
Yeah.
Oh, hey!
I tell you, I get no respect.
Yeah, and so has the idea of like everlasting life been articulated before this scene? Do we know that's why we're going after the Grail?
Yeah, I think he mentions it.
Or is that supposed to be a twist? Is that Donovan?
No,
is that why Donovan's
I think
going after
Donovan
it?
mentions it when he first meets Indy.
But doesn't he say something in this scene like, I want it for everlasting life, the Nazis want it for world domination?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm making the quest about saving his father's life.
The Knight could have caused... The Knight...
Needs.
It occurs to me now that the Knight could have, solved a lot of problems if he just put a note up before those first blades that just says, by the way, I can't leave past the seal.
Yeah.
You have to stay here forever if you...
Well, it's just like Donovan leaving it to the end to say that his father was the leader of the project.
Yeah.
It's like you're burying the lead once again.
Yeah, always.
But making the quest suddenly about saving his father's life is the kick in the pants that the movie needed.
Yeah, totally.
Because it brings the plot and the theme together. And this as Spielberg tells it, this seemed to happen organically where, Lucas was pushing the idea of the Holy Grail. Spielberg wanted to make a movie about fathers and sons, and this was where they thought that those two ideas could come together. It's absolutely, it's exactly the right.
They're right
time.
about that.
Yeah. But yeah, more booby traps. We're sort of looping back to the opening of Raiders here.
Yeah.
In a kind of ring theory.
But none of them are
feels
as good as
right.
Raiders.
No, but they're pretty good.
Yeah.
I mean, they're like, it's like a cinematic crossword. It's sort of puzzle solving.
Yeah.
Which
Well,
I
the
like
one-
because it's a movie about an academic hero, so I like that they're.
No, yeah, I don't
kind
have
of
a
like
problem with
crossword
that. I
puzzles.
think the one I have the most
They don't
problem
look
with
good.
is that they don't look good, and the second one, because if he stepped on that thing and fell through it, he's still facing forward. So if he grabbed onto another plate, that plate should fall away too, unless it's one of the letters for Jehovah.
Unless it's controlled by the Christian God who is in charge of this all.
Yes. And I would, I'd like to see some sort of rock underneath all the ones that are,
Yeah.
it's just a big vacuum. There's nothing holding those things up.
Yeah. But they saved the best for last because, well, and I like the fact that they call back to him counting in Greek, and now he has to think
Yeah.
in Latin. So it's something that we know he should be able to do, but we also don't know if he's able to do it.
Yeah.
Which is a great dilemma to be in. And of course, the juxtaposition of Henry figuring out that Jehovah
Before
begins with Jehovah begins with
the
an
eye.
and then the cutting to the hard cut to Indy going Jay and just stomping down with his foot.
Idiot.
Yeah, I love the idea of him. He's like always stumbling into the wrong decision.
Yeah.
And then I think the leap of faith is. I mean, it's such a great optical illusion. It's like
Yeah.
the culmination of everything ILM have done up to this point. That they can just express everything about this idea in a
I guess
really what seems like a really simple optical effect that must have been an absolute bitch to pull off.
It's a nightmare.
Yeah.
And the thing is like it shows the good work of ILM. That part is believable. Whether or not somebody
Yeah.
could do it in real life, that's the part I take issue with.
But it's not real life.
I know.
But it's a simple idea, isn't it? It's like
It
it's
is,
not
yeah.
a leap. It's not a leap of faith. It's just that you have to believe there's a bridge there. But look, there's a bridge there.
Right.
You just can't see it. And
So
love-
I
love
forgive
that,
it for
I love
that.
that it's, and we've seen the picture. We know something's up because we've seen the picture of him, like following the cup over
Right.
the chasm. So we're like, we're curious. It's like, what could this possibly mean? And
Yeah.
it comes down to ILM's great visual
Wizardry.
effects work. Yeah. And I love that it's it's what Spielberg says about every department working together, and this was ILM's moment to shine. And
they do.
essentially, as far as they knew, the sort of climactic set piece of the movie, pretty much
Mm-hmm.
of the trilogy. And then we get to the Grail Knight,
Yes.
who immediately falls backwards with a Star Trek comedy sting, which is a gratuitous and unnecessary breather, I think, at this point. The stakes are pretty high.
Yeah.
We don't have time for this slapstick shenanigans now. Henry's dying in the other room.
Tell me what you think about the night.
Apart from that, literal stumble,
Mm-hmm.
I think he's. I don't like the idea of it. I think it's performed very
Okay.
well.
So that's
don't
my
think-
deal.
I
think it's performed very well. I think it's a bad idea.
Yeah, they got this old Shakespearean guy to bring it gravitas and legitimacy. But as soon as you start to personify the fantasy storyline, it leads you down a very bad road. And the next two
it's
movies
dangerous.
really, both movies suffer from personifying
Mm-hmm.
the fantasy element
Right.
because the art before it was just objects, right? It was like supernatural objects.
Mm-hmm.
And from this point on, now it is still a supernatural object. It's the Holy Grail, but the Holy Grail has a kind of a Highlander protecting it.
A
So
guard.
Yeah. It's a whole nother level of fantasy that the movie has to contend with.
Yes, he can keep drinking from the cup, but he also has to just sit in a room for 700 years? That seems like what we know about mental health. He's not going to be he's not going to be
That's why
place.
Marcus is the way he is now.
Yeah.
He was the last guy who did this job. And also I think it's not like this whole sequence feels very Halloween. It feels very spirit Halloween. Like the cobwebs at the beginning.
Yeah,
and then
right.
when we get to the Grail Knight, like he's not very imaginatively ghosted up. They've just got like grey makeup on him.
Yeah, right.
And I feel like it's that they've not really thought about how we make him a supernatural being. They just
right.
slap some grey makeup on him.
But you know,
because also they don't want to admit that they've gone that far in the movie.
Exactly, right. But it's funny how far just a good performance can take you. Because I forgive all of it based mostly just on his performance. And of course, once you get to the line he chose poorly, you're won over.
Is that in one of your video games as well?
No, just Mola Ram, I tell you. Just Mola Ram.
I love Julian Glover's anecdote about that getting a laugh in the audience.
Yeah, that was really fun,
And it wasn't a laugh that they'd anticipated.
Mm-hmm. But he talks about how dryly he delivers it and how perfectly he delivers it. And he does.
It's true. Yeah, he does, yeah. And, you know, just like Raiders, the villains are foiled by their own historical ignorance.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're attracted to the wrong elements of the Grail. So
of the Grail,
one of them
sure.
Thinks it's going to be the most garish-looking cup that's there because he's an American
idiot.
He's literally an American.
Those are synonymous.
Yeah, he's the kind of folk devil that Green Day will soon sing about. And then, just like Raiders, it culminates in a moment of body horror.
Yeah, I really like that stop motion.
Yeah, well, it's digital. It's CGI.
Is it really?
Yeah,
I thought it was a combination of the two.
It's like digitally created and enhanced.
Okay.
It looks like he's regenerating into Christopher Lloyd, for a moment. But it's like CGI with the intent and aim of keeping the effects as visceral as possible.
Mm-hmm.
I don't feel like we've ever seen CGI used this way again.
Mm.
Like it feels tangible. It doesn't feel like It doesn't feel Uncanny Valley at all. Like it feels like you're going through the motions of decay.
Right.
And I love how they just cut to a skeleton falling to the ground. It's like so simple, but so effective.
So easy.
Yeah.
Show the dust and wind on the skull.
And this is Ilsa's redemption, her redemption arc, isn't it? Because she sets him up for this. She chooses it for him, and I don't think I clocked that as a kid, but now I.
Oh, really? Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I think I was just like, he's tacky. He's gonna go for the tackiest cup. And it is partly that because he's like, yeah, it's definitely that one. That one's got the most jewels.
Yeah.
But she has to set him up for that. And soft focus again. We're back.
I know, right?
But here used for the sense of the ethereal again. Slap some grey makeup on him, put some soft focus, and we'll believe in this ghost.
Yeah, right.
It's kind of sloppily put together. And there's always a catch to these religious MacGuffins. It's never straightforward, is it?
No, yeah.
It's like you got to read the fine print.
No passing the seal.
Yeah, there's always a catch.
Mm-hmm.
I love even though it's not Sean Connery's stomach, clearly because it has no hair on it.
There's some hair on it, not Sean Connery level of hair.
Well, that's what I mean. Like,
yeah,
like you see it and you go, "That's not Sean Connery's stomach. That's not enough hair for it."
But I love the effect.
I've seen Diamonds Are Forever, the scene where he's walking around naked, and his pubic hair goes up to about his navel. And then the whole it's so funny, and even Spielberg is kind of amazed by this. That we have this Jewish filmmaker who can't help but put Christian allegory in his movies. Because
Yeah,
we already
right.
had E.T., which is a Jesus allegory.
Mhm.
This moment of him pouring the water
Over the
into
wound.
holy water. I mean, it could have come out of a religious movie. It's
Yeah.
that. It could have been from The Sound of Freedom.
It's
or
such a
something
good
like that.
effect. I love it.
Oh, and it's just Alka-Seltzer, right?
I think so, but
So simple.
so easy.
And so effective. Like, you feel it,
Mhm.
because they have him wince as it goes on, as if it
Right.
hurts slightly.
Yeah.
And then it kind of turns into a cigarette burn, and then it's kind of all washed away.
Well,
But it's just, like, it's interesting that whenever Spielberg is asked about the Christian allegory in his film, it's like, yeah, I don't understand it either. I was raised Jewish. I don't know why this keeps coming
why
up.
does this keep happening?
Without denying it, again, a refreshing change from Lucas.
Well, and then, because Elsa's got the cup and she's passing the seal, and the ground shakes and splits apart. I like that old knight managed to dawdle himself across that bridge again, but
Yeah.
but
Well, it's easy now. Indy's thrown that dust on it.
yeah.
Everyone, even Donovan can get over it now.
But I there's always something that Spielberg will do that I think is really smart. He knows how to kind of punctuate. He knows how to kind of finish his movie.
Mm-hmm.
So the idea of Elsa trying to reach the cup and he can't hold her and she falls to her death because she can only think of one thing, and the idea of Henry catching his son and when he calls him Indiana, it's really good.
Him saying "Let it go" never fails to bring a tear to my eye.
Yeah.
It's literally the franchise ending moment. Like, Indiana Jones has learned something for the first time.
For
in this
forever.
trilogy.
Exactly. For the first time ever.
He's figured out it's more important to surround yourself with loved ones than
Yeah.
you'd be off chasing treasure and fortune and glory. So it's the culmination of everything in the franchise, and all it takes is him calling him by the name he wants to be called, and then
Right.
looking him in the eyes and saying, just let it go.
Let it go.
And for it to, the reason it has such weight is because it's been established throughout the movie that Henry is the one who can't let go of this obsession. So for him to say that, it's permission for Indy to stop caring.
Right.
And then I think the best use of the knight in this whole movie is when he appears again. You're not quite sure how he hotfoots it over
Yeah.
to there. But there's just a moment where Henry looks at the knight, and they have a moment of looking at each other, and it's like this is the morality tale. This is where Henry realizes if you give way to your obsessions, this is what you end up.
This
as.
is how you.
It's a
This is how
cautionary
you
tale.
finish. Right.
And it's so clear. Does he wave goodbye? I always Mandela effect that he waves goodbye, but I don't think he does he?
No, he does.
Oh, he does? Okay.
The knight does.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the
I
knight.
thought I'd imagine that because
No, the
he
knight
talks
puts up
so
his
much
hand.
about. Oh, he does. Okay, so it is literally him waving goodbye.
It
but
is.
I think also is there the acknowledgement that if I'm not if I don't focus on what's important, I'm gonna end up like you
Yeah, totally.
at that point. And then they, the running gag that we didn't see coming.
Mhm.
Indiana Jones is named after the dog.
The dog. We named the dog Indiana.
Followed by Marcus and one we did see coming.
Mm-hmm.
It's just him dicking around on a horse.
As they literally ride
Just
off into the sunset.
Which is exactly what I thought how Marcus would end the movie.
I know the way.
Yeah. Yeah, and it's a great metafilmic way to end the movie, literally riding off into the sunset as the credits rise. And this whole movie has been kind of shaped like a Western, more so than the other movies, with the way, the beginning, middle, and end have strong Western elements. So
Totally.
this is the perfect ending for that, I think.
Good stuff.
Yeah.
Overall.
Every time, like the end, we make some kind of blanket statement of approval, and we have to walk it back just a little.
Just a little bit.
Yeah.
All
That's what
right.
these movies, yeah. Even
Well,
the good ones, they have their problems.
Do you have a credit check, or should we just insert your credit check from the last episode?
You probably could, because my first credit check is, what is this featuring deal? Because again, the people credited as featuring are not in the movie for a very long time. Second assistant director, Artist Robinson. Unless this is the biggest typo ever in a Hollywood movie, this man's name also has his credit in it. If the man is really called Artist Robinson. He is his own credit.
There you go.
Financial controller George Marshall. There's so many Marshalls.
Yeah, there's a lot of
Marshall
Marshalls.
College, financial controller George Marshall.
Yeah.
Frank Marshall.
Frank
the producer,
Marshall, producer.
director of the making of. Did they give this guy the job because he's called Marshall and they wanted to have a Marshall Plan, of economic aid behind the movie? Charge hand riggers, special effects, Dave Skinner, Sid Skinner.
The Skinner
That
boys.
sounds like, but what that sounds like is that there was child labor on the set. And that at some point, Dave or Sid Skinner, whichever one is the father, died and was replaced by their son. Either Sid or Dave. Yeah, the Jordan credit comes heavy with a lot of royal thank yous.
Oh, very
which
much so.
it makes
I
it feel
noticed
like-
that, yeah.
Yeah, the basically what happened in real life mirrored what happened in the Hatay
Right.
scene. Donovan's Digital Compositing. It sounds more like the company that made the effect, not the result of the effect. So yeah, digital compositing to make the
face.
the Doc Brown face. This could be one of my favorite credits of all time.
Ooh.
Scoutmaster, Larry Sanders. I don't know why that's so funny.
Just out there scouting locations with a dog that keeps jumping up.
Yeah.
Oh,
Larry Sanders, unbelievable.
that's great.
Gestapo, Pat Roach. So Pat Roach is in this movie briefly.
Yeah,
So we were cheated out of another Andy Roach fight.
we really were. I
don't
don't
know
like
if it was
that.
filmed or cut out of the movie or just never filmed, but I don't understand that choice.
It's weird.
Again, was it an adverse reaction to Temple of Doom? Maybe, I don't know.
I don't think people even put together at that time that Pat Roach was the same actor from the first movie in Temple of Doom.
How great would it have been if he had like a different hairstyle again?
Yeah, exactly.
It was just like Dr. Hibbert through the ages. Every time you saw him, he'd have a different hairstyle. Personal training for Harrison Ford, Body by Jake. It's a less impressive credit than the one from the last movie, as if neither is quite happy with the results this time.
Yeah, he's a little bit
Anyway.
older, but he still looks great.
Oh, I think he looks incredible, yeah.
Is that it?
That's it, yeah.
All right.
That's my last credit check.